Good morning, everybody. Hello, hello. Happy Friday. Happy March 1st. Thank you. We are going to go ahead and get started this morning. So again, good morning and welcome to our 9th Curriculum Alignment Conference. My name is Teresa Dorman, and I'm going to be one of your presenters today. First thing I want to do is just a couple of housekeeping things to get us kicked off. So first of all, at your seat, we are in an age of compliance. So you have a please allow us to take your photograph form that we would like to have everybody sign if you are willing. You don't need to worry about witness. We will do that for you. So that's what that piece of paper is that you see on your table. Second little piece of housekeeping just for this morning. If you're not familiar with this building and the facilities, obviously I'm hoping everybody's already found the snacks out back. Restrooms are right back where you came in. So from where I'm standing, they're back on the right. So if you need facilities, that's where you're going to find that. And one final piece of housekeeping, Wi-Fi is free. You want to go to the Wi-Fi that is VC Guest, open up a browser, and then follow the prompts. It will work eventually. You might have to close your browser and reopen a different one, but eventually that will work, and it is free Wi-Fi access. So those are my few little howdy doodies for the morning, and we're going to get underway. And so first of all, it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker this morning. She is Dr. Elizabeth Dooley, who is the current Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of Central Florida. She's the UCF's Chief Academic Officer, providing leadership for the 13 colleges, including the College of Medicine, along with multiple campuses, research centers, and institutes. Her responsibilities include curriculum, faculty development, academic support services, student services, and oversight of UCF's academic operating budget. Prior to becoming provost in October, she served as UCF's interim provost. Her first position with UCF was as the vice provost for the Division of Teaching and Learning and dean of the College of Undergraduate Studies, where her role included oversight of curriculum, academic planning, faculty appointments, faculty development, promotion, and tenure decisions. She joined UCF in 2015 from West Virginia University, where she was an associate provost for undergraduate academic affairs and served in other leadership roles. Please join me in welcoming Provost Dooley.
Good morning, and thank you for that warm welcome. Certainly a lot of words in terms of my bio, and so that usually isn't necessary, but thank you, Dr. Dorman, for that. So how's everybody doing this morning? Quite well? You know, I think this is amazing. One of the things we talk about at UCF and other places is the word partnership. And I've been in higher ed for about 30 years, and I've never seen anything like this. And when you talk about the power of partnership, it really is about the power of the people. It's about the individual who folds into the thoughts, folds into the vision that really makes this a reality. And you are making this a reality. So as I present my words today, and I think, Dr. Dorman, this was supposed to be a welcome, but you introduced me as if I was a keynote speaker. So if I don't have a lot to say, forgive me. So I want to, first of all, thank our Direct Connect partners, the College of Central Florida, Daytona State College, Eastern Florida State College, Lake Sumter State College, Seminole State College, and Valencia College. Without you, this would not be possible. Our students need us. We talk about the transfer pipeline, and I want us to all believe in our students. If they want it, they should be given an opportunity to achieve it. Oftentimes we hear the word access. And for me, it doesn't matter where you start, it's where you end up. And we provide the access, but what happens in the meantime? We can't start with the front end. What happens in the middle that allow our students to come out more successful than ever? I want to be careful because we like to paint pictures of who comes from where and what they're doing. And to me, it's about the individual and what that individual wants. And can we help them exceed? And can we help them achieve and succeed? And what is the answer? The answer is yes. But they also have a role and responsibility. Since 2006, more than 49,000 Direct Connect transfer students have realized their dream of earning a degree. How many of you all have been a part of this curriculum alignment conversation for more than 10 years? How many of you all have been part of this Direct Connect curriculum alignment conversation for 5 years? And so I want to ask you a question. Because of your role in this exercise, has there been a noticeable difference? I'm not convinced. Has there been a noticeable difference? And then I'll ask you another question. Have our students realized that difference? When I'm talking to colleagues at the University of Central Florida and they talk about how impactful their work is, I ask them a very simple question. Where are our students now? And if we ask them, will they come back with the message that is matching your message today, which was yes, they are seeing a difference. How many of our students do we believe are not only transfer ready or ready to move on to UCF? How many are major ready? When we talk about 2+2, or if we talk about one major connecting to the major at the University of Central Florida, are our students ready to go into that major immediately and be successful? I had a situation once where we were talking about articulating degrees to the University of Central Florida, and the one student in particular would have had to come to the university and take an additional 157 credit hours before he would be permitted to graduate. Is there something wrong with that? And so when we talk about curriculum alignment, it's for the ease of the transition. When we talk about curriculum alignment, we're talking about placement in the next stage of that student's matriculation. And can we get our students there? And do they know that they want to be there? We had another conversation with students, and we talk about 4-year, 6-year graduation rates. We had a student panel. I was supposed to be doing the welcome, right? We had a student panel, and we were talking about 4-year graduation rate, because this is my 30th year in higher education. So when I went to college, it was just 4 years, and we didn't think anything beyond 4 years. But here we are today. We said, we would like for you to graduate from college in 4 years. And their comment was like, we didn't know 4 years was a thing. We thought we were just supposed to come to college and just hang out and have an experience. So my comment to those students, when you went to the 9th grade, at whatever high school you went to, did you go with the mindset of just hanging out? So I'm continuing to ask myself, did we create this current paradigm? We, adults. You know, as parents, we say, or even as faculty members, as I'm not going to use the word, but we think we know all things. But did we create this for our students? We know that some of our students have to work. There is a reality to this, but did we create this 6-year graduation thing? Did we do this? And if we did, how do we undo it? So that students don't think that college is a hangout period. They're not trying to stay at Lake Howell or Winter Park or any of these high schools for 6 years. There's a roadmap. There's an intentionality. And that's the work that you all are doing here today and continuing to do into the future. I love the fact that you all have decided that it's beyond STEM. There are other things that need to be better articulated. So the amazing thing about this group, and this is you all, you see immediately what the changes are and what the needs are. And if we've been doing this for 10 years, what's the next level? So my challenge to you all today is what's next? And how do we identify that we're moving curriculum alignment to the next level, whatever that might be? And then how does it better advance our students? Because that's what it's all about. It's also about faculty excellence. The attributes that you're bringing to the conversation cannot be had without the expertise of the faculty members and administrators who sit in this room today. I want to also thank some other valuable contributors. Linda Niedema, did I say that correctly? Where are you? She's not here. Can you give her an applause? Amy Locklear, are you here? Can we applaud her? Laura Ross. Maybe I should quit asking, are you here? Are you here? Applaud her as well. Mark Paul. Hey, give him a shout out. Claire Brady, are you here? Give her a shout. Kathleen Polinsky, are you here? If not, let's give her a shout out. And I now want to thank Dr. Teresa Dorman and Dr. Harrison Huunge and our Direct Connect partner for making this happen today. And I would like for you all to applaud yourselves for the work that you're doing and the work that you're going to continue to do. Thank you so very much for being here. Joe had a speech for me, but I didn't use it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dooley, Provost Dooley, for that challenge and kind message. You've kind of set up a vision for us and something that will continue striving at. Please again join me in thanking Dr. Provost Dooley for those kind words. Like Provost Dooley said, curriculum alignment has been with us for a while. And through the inception of Direct Connect in 2005, the leadership went ahead and challenged faculty. They wanted faculty to be engaged, to be involved in student success. And one of the things they suggested was curriculum alignment. And this is one of the things that is being done, which is unique to not only the Direct Connect partnership here in Central Florida, but actually statewide. It's a unique engagement where faculty are at the center of the, are involved in student success, transfer student success discussions. And in 2006, the emphasis was on STEM, foundational courses in STEM, math, chemistry, physics, biology. Chemistry was introduced in 2007, and engineering was introduced in 2013, the foundational courses in engineering. Like Provost Dooley mentioned, out of the discussions regarding student success, there was need, again, to bring more on board other disciplines. And one of the faculty members at UCF had mentioned that something she had mentioned, she had seen with students who come into the theater program. Those students, one of the challenges they were facing was that was getting their portfolio ready. So she engaged us, and we reached out to the partner institutions, and faculty in theater decided to engage in curriculum alignment discussions. We've had one meeting, and I tell you, it was really, it was a great meeting where the faculty were fully engaged, and we identified some things that we would do to continue with those conversations. Again, in 2018, we brought on board accounting, the foundational courses in accounting. Right now, UCF, Valencia, and Seminole State College, we've had conversations on accounting 2 times. We will bring on board other partner institutions in the near future after we've crafted some of the foundational documents. And then this year we started conversations in composition, and we'll be doing one for speech. And this is not where we'll end. One of the things we encourage faculty to do is to help us identify which disciplines. Because when we have faculty buy-in, our conversations are successful. Allow me to reiterate some of the goals of curriculum alignment. At the core of alignment is aligning the core content and competencies of target courses. And by aligning those core content and competencies, we are ensuring that the students, are successful. The goal is that they are successful in the next level course, whether they take it at UCF or whether they take it at the state college. We know the students swirl. Students come to UCF, they take a course, and then they go to Valencia, they take the next level course, and back and forth. So with curriculum alignment, it enables the students to be successful because they are getting prepared, and they are getting exposed to the same competencies across the consortium. Of course, the ultimate goal is a bachelor's degree at UCF. When we have the conversations on curriculum alignment, and those of you who regularly participate in these meetings, one of the caveats, one of the things we emphasize is that we recognize and appreciate the differences in terms of institutional missions, differences in terms of resources, differences in terms of student profiles. But at the center of our discussions is student success. We are all engaged and focused on student success. That's what brings us to the table, because we know our children, they will come to your institution, they will come to my institution, and we want them to succeed. We want them to be prepared for what is next. Some of the literature indicates that when students, when students are making progress in their curriculum, those students are likely to be retained. But for those students who are not making progress in their curricular pathway, those students are likely to stop out. So what you're doing is important in that by making sure that the students are exposed to the competencies that they require to take the next level course, whether it's in STEM, whether it's in accounting or any other discipline, that depends on the foundational skill that they're getting in your class. Then those students, you're making an impact in their lives. Again, at the center of our discussions is transfer student success. And one of the things we do is, for those of you who have come to those meetings, is that Teresa Dorman has always shared the longitudinal data, the course sequence data. And we always say that the intent of that data is to start conversations, to identify where the gaps are and start working, or start identifying ways on mitigating those gaps through aligning the curriculum, something that you have within your locus of control. Our discussions are informed by best practices, and we also recognize that some of the programs are accredited. So we look back at the accrediting agencies and see what documents, what standards they've prescribed, and use that information in our alignment discussions. The intent is not just to create, inventories of what should be taught in one course or the next, but the intent is to create awareness among the faculty that if these competencies are exposed to the students, they are likely to succeed. And then we urge the faculty to go back to, each faculty to go back to their individual institution, to their department, and share that information with peer faculty. So that aspect of action is really important. Some of the tools we use in alignment, and this is a familiar document. We engage in discussions about what needs to be taught, what courses or topics or subtopics need to be taught. We also look at the learning outcomes, discussions around learning outcomes, and what kinds of assessment have to be, the students have to be exposed to demonstrate mastery of those learning outcomes. We discuss pedagogy, and we also discuss resources. And you'll realize that having this inventory of topics that have to be taught and the subtopics, and also whether it's mandatory, overview, or optional, or at times, for instance, in accounting, they are discussing the depth of coverage for each of the areas. Something that I think is really cool. They are talking about that for this topic, that you spend a considerable amount of time because it's a critical skill that the students need in their intermediate accounting or the next level course. This document in itself is not an end. What is more important is when you take this information back to your peer faculty and you get feedback, because we are not the know-it-all, but what the feedback that we can get from your peer faculty and buy-in in looking or reviewing this document and seeing that it really captures what should be taught within that given course is important to us. We value that feedback. If you can take it back, if you can share it with the adjunct faculty who has just come to your department, or a new faculty member who's building a course within your department, the same course, that this is a resource. It's for you. And you are the guys who have created these resources for each of us. These resources, we've archived them in the curriculum alignment website, curriculumalignment.ucf.edu. Within this website, we have syllabi of each of the disciplines or the courses that we discuss. Within that syllabi, you have information about the text that your peer is using at College of Central Florida, at Daytona State College, at Eastern Florida State College, at Valencia, at UCF. You also get information about the prerequisites, the credit hours And we regularly update this information each time we meet. We do it because we think it's important. It's important information for faculty. But help us share this information. Help us share this with your faculty. Because when they see these documents, we can get feedback, and it's a tool for them, a tool they can use. One of the beautiful things about this document is that sometimes it has been taken back and has led to conversations within departments and even discussions on changing the credit hours so that they can be aligned. Another thing is that for faculty who are thinking about adopting a new textbook, this is a good reference tool. What are your peers using? And when you're making choices, you can use that information. It's for you. And we need to take a lot of time in these things. In the past 3 years, I wanted to give you a snapshot on in terms of attendance. We've really enjoyed great participation. Some of you might say the numbers are small, but these are numbers of faculty who are coming to our meetings. And one of the things that I wanted to point out is that we've enjoyed great participation in all areas. And if you can get additional faculty to participate as well, that will be important to us. You notice that accounting, they've met twice, theater once, composition twice, and in the other disciplines, for instance, in biology, they meet once a year, but all the other disciplines, they meet twice a year. One meeting in spring and another meeting in the fall. So we really appreciate your continued participation and engagement in curriculum alignment efforts. When Provost Dury asked how many of you have been engaging in this conversation since 2006, I was really happy to see the hands that went up, because I had looked back at the minutes, the names of those individuals who have been participating. I mean, it's amazing that you've kept the faith and because you are invested in student success. Now, allow me to highlight some of the things we've been discussing and talking about in some of these alignment meetings. Not only are faculty participating in curriculum alignment, but their advisors are intricately involved in those conversations. They attend and participate in those conversations. And one of the messages they've consistently reminded us is that we should tell the students to complete a course sequence in the institution in which they've started that sequence. That is really important. And if you can encourage the students to take advantage of the smaller class sizes at the state colleges, that will be powerful. Earlier on, Dr. Dury had mentioned about 2+2. If a student has identified a major they want to pursue at UCF, let them take advantage and not only complete the GEP courses, the General Education Program courses at your institution, but in the 24 hours, let them take advantage and take the common program prerequisites they require for that particular major, so that when they transition, they will be junior ready. You guys are teaching these courses. If they can take those courses, they will come to UCF, they are junior ready, they will make progress. We've also we've also continued our discussions on assessment. And with regard to assessment, we are talking about shared or samples of final exams and tests. Within the curriculum alignment website, one of the things we've done with the help of Emily Bartov and the UCF Connect, we've created a restricted access portal where faculty can share samples of exams. We already have samples of exams from math, and we have samples of exams from engineering. And as we continue engaging with faculty in these discussions, we are encouraging them to share some of those samples of exams. The faculty have to opt in to view these exams, to get access, a password to access those exams, because you take a lot of time creating the exams, and we don't want them to be in the wrong hands, and we have to keep the integrity. The reason we are talking about the samples of final exams is of late we've been discussing aspects of rigor, and faculty have shared that if they can know what each other is testing, they can modify the exams, and this is just a resource, another resource for you guys. We've had discussions about common exams. That is tough. We know there is a freedom, academic freedom. That's tough. So our approach has been, for instance, in biology, we identified a group of faculty who will go back and sit and start discussing what, creating samples of exams or creating a pool of exams on the critical learning outcomes, and creating a document on how those exams will be shared, and how the data from those exams, if commonly applied by all the institutions, how the data will be used. That is important. That is important. We want to keep the integrity of this process, and we will never abuse any faith that you guys have entrusted on us. So as we go forward with some of these common exams, when we'll have those, any data that we'll collect, I'm believing we'll use it to continuously improve our discussions or to identify insights for improvement. In mathematics, in physics, and also in chemistry, we've had a push to involve the K-12 faculty. Way back in 2008, for those of you who are participating, I know Pam Kavanagh, you were participating in those conversations. Way back we had, I saw that the curriculum alignment conversations involved the K-12 faculty. Now we want to invite them back. We had, last Friday we had a chance to have, in the physics, we had K-12 faculty join us. Last semester, when we were at Osceola campus for math, we had a chance to meet with K-12 faculty from Osceola area, thanks to Nicole. We intend to invite the K-12 faculty because we believe it's an ecosystem, that the skills the students attain in K-12 are critical in their success in the courses they take at the university or at the college. We also believe that if we can create awareness of college expectations when the K-12 faculty are discussing with the students, there is a likelihood that those children or those kids will be more prepared when they come to college. That makes their transition easier. Knowing the kind of labs that are done at the university or at the college is important. Or knowing programming opportunities for K-12 that are available to both faculty and students, whether it's in the summer or during the semester. Knowing that is important, and we want our kids to be engaged, to be connected. For instance, in physics, if the students can start early in physics, this is what one of the this is what the physics liaison for K-12 engagement at UCF was saying, that if the students can sign up for physics earlier, then we are likely to have a wider participation in terms of underrepresented groups in the STEM areas, particularly in physics. Recently, we started recognizing your efforts, your attendance, and we issued certificates of participation. If you did not receive in the past year, during lunch, let us know and we'll track down your certificate and give it to you or send it to you. The intent of the certificates is that you can include them in your professional portfolio, because what you do is important. Allow me again to highlight something else that has spawned off of the curriculum alignment efforts. UCF and Seminole State College faculty in math, particularly in Trig, have been engaging for over a year and collaborating in not only aligning just the content, but aligning the exams. This is a hard work that these faculty, Rashid, Christine, Christina, Lena, Alina Stefanov, and others. This is hard work. They've put a lot of efforts. They meet at after hours. They meet at Panera Bread just to plan. Just to plan. Seeing them in that space and having them looking through, going through the exams, the results from the previous, from fall, is powerful. It's because they are engaged. They even looked for funding, and they are going to present their work at ICTCM this spring. So some of the things they've done is that last fall they covered similar objective across all tests and final exams in Trig. Some of you will be asking, how would that be possible? One of the things that I mentioned, which has been contentious when we discuss, is the use of the calculator in math. You bring that conversation anywhere in the state, it's contentious. But this group of faculty, the way they went around that issue is that they identified 80% of the exams or the tests that are to be administered, and then a certain percentage to be administered with the calculator. That way it gave them wiggle room not to mess with any institutional practices. So that is important, that as we do these curriculum alignment discussions, there is no imposition, but it's a dialogue to know what is good for the student. This spring, they are aligning the format of tests and final exam questions to ensure that the level of the exams are the same. And we expect that they will complete item analysis of exam data and will generate some insights from this work. So I'm really proud of what they are doing. It's a spawn of curriculum alignment. And what you guys are doing, I'm mentioning this because after curriculum alignment, alignment discussions end, we don't stop there. Conversations continue even after meetings. Faculty from each institutions are getting in contact with each other and asking, asking each other, about a resource or about some information. So that is really important. We are also creating space for faculty to engage because you are experts in this area. Dr. Dooley challenged us on some of what is next. For me, I'm thinking this is what is next. I believe that this is what is next. The chemistry group met in the fall, and they they started conversations around using ACS exams. Not all institutions use ACS exams, but a good number does. So this last fall and this spring, some faculty were discussing the use of the ACS exam, and one of the things we have mentioned is that we have identified volunteers who will discuss about aligned assessment, pilot the use of ACS exam, identify preparatory skills the students require for the general chemistry, identify the preparatory concepts the students should know for the general chemistry, and identify mastery skills that the students should attain after completing that course, and mastery concepts, and also identify skills and concepts that the students stumble or struggle with in general chemistry. And how would you use that? Shall we use that information? This is an undertaking that will involve the faculty now after identifying areas where the students struggle in, that the faculty will now create modules for remediation. That is important. If we are talking about student success, we have brain trust. You guys are experts. You have the capacity to create modules or create, pool of resources where students can go to and not only students and faculty can go to and learn more about if they are struggling in the preparatory skills or preparatory concepts. The remediation models can help with that. If they are struggling to master a critical skill, the remediation modules can help with that. We know that our students, some of them are non-traditional. They will not be able to, not all of them will go to see their tutor. Not all of them will go for the tutoring centers. Some of them are working. So if we can have modules which are open access and online and created by faculty from the Direct Connect to be used by students within the consortium and beyond, we are creating a resource and we are also contributing towards student success. This is what I'm saying, just as a tiny little bit in trying to answer one of the things that we've been challenged with. We did a survey and about 127 of you responded, and one of the things you mentioned, how curriculum alignment has influenced your practice is that it has reaffirmed your teaching practices, you're experts in that area, or changed my pedagogical practices, or changed course assessment, or changed how I advise students. We also did a focus groups, and I want to thank those of you who participated in the focus groups. In some of the things you mentioned include internal alignment, that even within the conversations, you noticed that some of the disciplines at UCF were not internally aligned. And I take this well because the physics, when we have participation from by the chairs from the chairs of the departments or key individuals within the curriculum alignment discussions, they take this back and some of this work can be done. One of the things that the physics department at UCF is doing out of curriculum alignment, they tasked Dr. Chen to start aligning college physics with calculus 1 and 2, and also general physics. So that work is ongoing. And I think Dr. Mushiro reported that last week when we met at Lake Sumter State College. The value of communication between and within institutions. This is something that you guys have identified. We know that our systems sometimes are big. You have hundreds of faculty teaching a course, and therefore communication with adjunct instructors and administrators between and administrators, between administrators and faculty is a concern. Sometimes we feel the leadership does not really get involved. Very little work happens for internal alignment. And of course, the TRIG work was mentioned here, and the idea that alignment requires a lot of effort. It does require a lot of effort. The focus group was conducted by the Office of Operational Excellence and Support at UCF, and these are some of the recommendations they made. Internal alignment, alignment of assessment, and also programmatic alignment. I'm going to post the report, the entire report from the focus group on the website, on the restricted site, so that you guys can get access. At the state level, I also wanted to mention that what we are doing is that we are a step ahead, but at the state level, there have been some alignment discussions, and I wanted to put Dr. Minton on spotlight, that they've been leading discussions with regard to mathematics redesign. And within those discussions, there's college to university alignment. So what we are doing is important, because at the state level, they've recognized that aligning curriculum is also important. So Dr. Tommy Minton is one of the leaders within that group. Dr. Julie Phelps here at Valencia is also involved, and other faculty who are also present here are involved in these discussions. So we are taking some of the feedback and experience we are receiving here to inform some of these conversations. So a while ago, some of you were asking, so what about, is this information percolating up to the state level? And I think the work that Dr. Minton and others are doing is that forum which will create space for some of our work to be featured. That is a snapshot of what we've been doing with regard to curriculum alignment in the past 1 year. And I think I want really to emphasize that the work you do is important and critical. And I also wanted to take this moment to welcome Dr. Melody Bowden. Dr. Melody Bowden is the interim vice provost and interim dean, the Division of Teaching and Learning at University of Central Florida. She's my boss. So.
Thanks, Harrison. Good morning, everybody. So it is so inspiring to be here with you and to hear about the amazing projects. I get to hear about a lot of them from the kind of UCF perspective, but it's great to see all of you here and to know especially some of the depth, I think, that we're going to in several of these disciplines. It's very exciting. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about something that we're doing at UCF right now, which impacts all of this, I think, and that is our general education refresh project that we've been working on for 2 or 3 years. So internally at UCF, we are rethinking how we think about, that was kind of repetitious, but how we think about general education. And we're doing that through an integrative lens. So we've been working on this. I'm sure this will be familiar to you. We looked at our general education curriculum. We talked to a whole lot of students. I spent a whole year just, as part of my work, talking with students about gen ed and some of the challenges they saw with it. And what they really saw was that, the GEP is a checklist of courses. It feels a little bit like 13th grade. They aren't seeing the connections across the courses. And so we started working on an integrative model. Christy Dirksen, who is here, was one of 6 fellows who worked on a project. I don't think any of our other fellows from year 2 are here. But we also have some folks who were involved. I know Rashid is here somewhere. You're going to see him in a video in a second. And he was part of a team that's been working this year on energizing general education, and it's really been focused this year on faculty development. And so we had 40 faculty members from all different disciplines getting together to talk about the ways in which their courses connect with each other, okay? So our model is focused on integrative, and I'm happy to dig more deeply into this sometime with any of you who are interested. I also want to let you know about an event that's coming up, and I'd really want all of you to know that we'll send out an invitation, but you're very welcome to join us. So on April 23rd, which is study day at UCF, and I don't know how that aligns with your schedule, but that is our day with no classes. We're having what we're calling the reboot camp. So to talk with faculty around campus about how to assess our new general education program. And so I would be very happy to have any of you join us who would like to. That'll be an event from like 9:30 to 3:30, and there'll be lunch. So we will be reaching out to invite you. And what we're talking about at that event is how to assess general education from sort of a competencies perspective, but including multiple competencies within Gen Ed. Now, we've all looked at ALC, so we know that this is something that we do already, but it's not, at least at UCF, it has not been reaching faculty that we are trying to, in all of these general education classes, do more than one thing, right? Do more than the disciplinary emphasis, or at least not on a large scale. And so I'm going to play for you a video, and I'm going to not watch while my face is on it a whole lot, and my voice, but about this project that we've been working on, and it'll give you a little bit of insight. This is kind of a video especially about the faculty development program, so it doesn't give you a lot of content about the details of the program, which I'm also happy to talk about. But it'll give you a feel for what we've been doing, especially with faculty development.
You know, when I think back to my undergraduate experience, and I had to take the GEP classes like everyone, I actually remember those GEP classes that were totally outside of my major to this day, probably better than even my major classes, because they were topics that, you know, at the time I didn't know a lot about. They were topics in religion and anthropology, and in one case, the anthropology led those classes I took as the GEP class to check off a box. It ended up becoming a double major for me.
What education is supposed to do over the arc of somebody's lifetime. Like, I really do think it's about making those connections, encouraging the connections the students can make on their own, and maybe helping them see connections that they wouldn't automatically see, at least in the moment.
You have a story to tell. And so this is your major, and this is GEP, the bigger world, just like the world of the play. This is the character, but this is the world of the play. And within that world, you have to learn how to maneuver, how to make it yours. And so that's how theater is relevant.
The General Education Program Refresh at the University of Central Florida. It focuses on curriculum redesign, it focuses on making connections across courses, it has a significant component of faculty development in which faculty members are getting together, working on forging more obvious and meaningful connections across their courses. Key stakeholders include faculty, students, advisors, department chairs, and upper administration at the university. We had focus groups, we had conversations with students at multiple levels, from students who hadn't started yet at UCF to those who are about to graduate. We learned from them that UCF's general education program didn't always feel like a cohesive experience. In some ways, it just seemed like a checklist of courses. And so we've been working hard with faculty and student input to make connections across those courses so that it feels like an experience, not just a list of classes.
Among the GEP programs, most of them are introductory courses, which in my perspective are very important. They are the courses that gives young minds exposure to the new field. It gives them a platform to connect together among different disciplines, and it gives them the possibility to shape new ideas and new forms of innovation in a setting that is not possible in any specific related courses in their own disciplines.
GEP curriculum is a series of classes that are designed to complement each other. And so, for example, if you take college algebra, you'll use those skills in classes like chemistry and economics. If you take economics, we study behavior, why people do what they do, and it turns out that's important when you go and take environmental science and you think about people's impact on the environment. Economics is also important if you're taking classes like history, anthropology, sociology, because they're really all about people and why people do what they do. And so really we've picked a set of classes that are definitely interconnected with each other.
So say you don't like history. At some point in your life, probably frequently, probably in everything you're going to do, you're going to need to make arguments based on evidence. So one of the things you can learn in my class, even if you hate history or even if you think it's not going to be relevant for you, is you can learn how to construct an argument based on valid evidence. It's a skill set that you can utilize in the remainder of your education, your academic career, and your post-graduation career. It's a skill set that you can use in conversations with your family at Thanksgiving.
The university is really trying to create this complete student, not ideal, complete student, one that's in a position to take his or her niche in society and make some meaningful contribution.
I think the most noticeable change in the general education program that's going to come out of this refresh is the ways in which the general education faculty are working together to give students a cohesive experience. And the most important thing, I think, that faculty members seem to get out of it was this feeling that, other people in this university, even if they're teaching a discipline that's completely different from mine, face the same challenges as well as have the same passion for teaching undergraduate students that I do.
In anthropology or in philosophy or in history, they have a different perspective. For example, in biology, it is more visual. So therefore, I learned a lot that their techniques that they adopt in their own disciplines, how I can transcribe those into my own field. So this is a big benefit.
Each time we walk on campus, we pass all the buildings and we go into our building. This development program allowed me to, it's almost like go to every different building and meet my peers in one place, which is wonderful.
We want students to be able to learn how those connections interrelate between the different faculty members and between themselves as students or potential employees in the future. It gives us an opportunity to kind of come out of our individual areas within the university system and to explore that as a team. So the same principles we want to model to our students, by doing this in a cohort with one another, we enable that same thinking process. We also get to look at it from the shoes of being a learner rather than an instructor.
General education provides fertile ground to start something that I believe is becoming relevant and important in today's society. How can we discuss differences of opinion on what is beautiful, but doing it through a civil discourse?
Okay, so that gives you a little bit of a feel for what we've been up to. I do want to tell you a few specific things lest you be concerned. So, first of all, we're not changing the content of any of these courses you've been carefully working on alignment with for 10 years, okay? So that's not what's happening at all in the courses. And in fact, we anticipate that this will lead to better internal alignment at UCF, which I know is one of the challenges that you work with. So, and we're not changing anything to do with our state program. We've managed to come up with a way to revitalize our general education program without having to do a big change that requires state approval. What we're doing is rethinking those connections and building this faculty community. So we are making metacognition and awareness of those connections across courses an explicit part of all of our GEP courses. We have a history faculty member who's talking with her students. They have to do 5 discussion posts every semester about
how the history class is connecting with the other GEP courses that they are doing. So we're emphasizing this idea that it's integrative and that the GEP will directly connect with the things that they want to do afterward. Now, we hope that as we move forward, we're hoping to do, it's kind of a soft launch in the fall because it's just a heavy lift to get everybody on board for the fall. But we will be doing this in a substantial way in the fall, and we invite all of you who are interested to join us in any way that you'd like to learn more about this and also to think about this approach on your own campus. Yeah, you have a question?
Well, we're trying to focus on active learning as a big part of our GEP training. Realistically, a lot of our courses are large, as you know, and we have multiple modalities. I think if I had to answer strategically what we're most committed to, it's a blended model. So we've really invested significantly in those courses that have a portion online and a portion face-to-face. Okay, so the reduced seat time model is what we're talking about, so that you have at least one class period per week in person, and then you have a significant portion of your work that's online. Based on the extensive research UCF does on outcomes of those modalities, that seems to be the most well received by students and also really the most effective in terms of success in those courses. That's what we're seeing. Yeah. So we have a product called Proctor Hub, which faculty can use or not use. And actually, this is very much by college. So the nursing college has their own thing, the College of Business Administration has their own thing, but all faculty can use this. I do want to clarify, though, when it comes to online learning, ASU patterns themselves much more after UCF than we do after them. Truthfully, UCF is much more of a leader in that, and ASU has a firewall between the faculty members. It's not the same faculty members who teach online at ASU. At UCF, the people who teach online at UCF are also the people who teach face-to-face. So I do think that's an important clarification. We copy them in a million ways, but that ain't one of them. Yes. And I'll tell you, of course, I spend a lot of time talking with students about these modality issues, and students are not students are not students. There are students who love online. There are students who don't thrive in that model, and so we just have to continue to be responsive to that. But this seems to be, the hybrid model seems to, now I will tell you as a faculty member, I think it's really hard. I think it's the hardest of all the modalities. It's the most work on our part, but it does seem to yield, in terms of the data that we've collected, the best success. Now, many of you are doing a lot with hybrid as well. I know I work a lot with Seminole State, and I know that they're doing a lot with that. So other questions, though, about what UCF is up to with this general education refresh? Okay. Yeah, did you have a question? Both. Of the three modalities, it is, and what we're defining as success is a C or better, and we also have student perception of instruction data that suggests that it is the most popular. Now, so it's not, so that's what we've, and Chuck Jubin and Patsy Moskal have published extensively on this from UCF, so we have a lot of very thoroughly vetted data on that. Yeah. So let me be clear that I'm not directly involved in that assessment, but I've read all of it. I've read all of Chuck and Patsy's work, and I'm not blown away by it in terms of what those success data show. What they show is two things: success rate defined as a C or better, and what the students say about it, okay? And again, it's hard because I'm not only an administrator, I'm also a faculty member, so I have all the skepticism that you have about these modalities. But it is compelling to me on that level. In terms of the question that you raised about those Spanish courses, sure, but you gave that specific example, and of course that's not my department, but I'm from that college. I'm a professor of writing and rhetoric. So I think that we are still learning and figuring out how to do this stuff. Now, I will tell you, we have, we have a SACS obligation to make sure that we are confirming that the person who takes a test and so forth is the right person, and that's something we're continuing to work on. It's tricky. Yeah. Yes, to define how we do that. But thank you for calling SACS. Just kidding. So it is up to the institution, and I did direct our SACS reaffirmation in 2015, wrote a significant part of that and that aspect of it in particular, and I can actually tell you a whole lot more detail than you want to know on that point. What we do primarily is focus on that password-protected account. But in the case of the Spanish, the faculty have available, all faculty members who teach online have available tools to ensure the identity of the person taking the test, including video proctored exams. All right. Anything else? Okay. Thank you. Oh, one more over here. I'll take it because we're very close to on time. There are multiple models. That is the most common. So that if you would normally have had a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you would only meet Monday, Wednesday, or you might do only Tuesday instead of Tuesday, Thursday. There are other models, and again, UCF is nationally kind of on the cutting edge of this stuff. We have some where students meet every other week for 3 hours or something like that, and the faculty are deeply involved in figuring out what they're trying to accomplish in their courses and what the modality is that best fits that. So my email is just melody@ucf.edu. So if you want to know more about the Gen Ed, if you want me to send you the PowerPoint about what we're doing with Gen Ed and you're just curious, I'm very happy to send it. Nobody can ever spell my last name, so I just grabbed that alias as soon as I could. All right, so thank you. Oh, but wait, there's more. Okay.
Please join me in thanking Dr. Melody Bowden. As you have seen, she's a fearless leader, a great advocate for faculty at UCF, a great advocate for faculty. And one more thing that I'll say is that I attended a Sunshine Teacher Conference that Dr. Bowden and Kevin Yee organized. And one of the things within that conference, there was a lot of presentations on online teaching. And one of the things that I took away is that we need to bring the folks who were presenting there, who were showcasing the best practices in online teaching to this group. So we'll look for opportunities in the future really to feature online teaching. And we'll invite each of your institutions to come and participate in those presentations. So I think that's a powerful thing that I've learned. I will do it. Thank you. Now it's time for break. There's still some breakfast. Mingle around, greet each other, and we'll resume back in 10:30. Thank you.
We are going to continue with our program. First, just a quick reminder to everybody. There is the please consent to letting us take your photograph form that's on your, at your place setting, that's not the right word, at your seat. We went around and we did a first round of collection of these. If you've not yet had an opportunity to review that and fill it out, please do so at this time. And you can just leave it on the table. We'll collect those when we break for lunch. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Dr. Melody Bowden again, who's going to introduce our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. This was all I was really supposed to do today. Whoops, I left, or someone took my stuff that was sitting up there. Nope, not an iPad. Paper? I left it right there. Okay, well, here I go, introducing ECES without any paper, but she is my friend. I am really excited to introduce all of you to ECES Artevega, with whom I've been collaborating for a really, really long time. We've published together, we've done 1,000 workshops, a lot of roadshow kinds of things, and all about student success, faculty development, and the things that you can tell I'm excited about. So when Harrison came to me in the fall and said, hey, do you have any suggestions for an excellent keynote speaker for the Curriculum Alignment Conference? Immediately I thought of ECES. At that time, however, ECES was at FIU, where we also collaborated a lot through the Florida Consortium of Metropolitan Research Universities projects that we've been working on. I'm excited to say, however, that she is now at Valencia. She is Vice President of Academic Affairs for Valencia and is going to be leading a lot of exciting initiatives, and she'll be working with many of you. She's only been there for 2 weeks. And I'm sure she's already done a whole lot, but watch out because she's a great speaker and she is a wonderful leader and also a wonderful friend. So please join me in welcoming ECES Artevega.
Thank you, my friend. That's a lot of pressure. I am, however, so happy to be here. I'm already taking lots of notes, so I'm happy I came early to find out what you've been up to. Since, again, I've only been here for a couple of weeks. I wanted to stay on this title slide. And I realized I've never done this before. This is the kind of symbolic slide that you put on there, but it has nothing of real significance. And that's very different today. So I'm going to say that sure, the title, and we'll get into that. That will be the bulk of what I would like to talk about. But I also wanted to point out not just that this is my new job and how welcomed I have been and how happy I am to have joined the Valencia family, but also that a lot of the information that I'm going to share and a lot of the insights that I have gleaned come from my work with the Gardner Institute. So I wanted to give them a little shout out. So the Gardner Institute on undergraduate education, I've been a fellow with them for a couple years, but mostly I wanted to acknowledge my thought partners. I'm happy to be here. The last thing I wanted to point you to is the date, right? It is the 1st of March, and I don't know what that means to you, but I will ask, does anyone know where they were on the 1st of March 13 years ago? Anyone? I know. I was in labor. I was in labor. I was supposed to give birth in mid-February, but she's trouble, and she still is. And so on the eve of the 1st of March, I went into labor, and so at this point, I was in quite a bit of pain. I remember that too. I was in a lot of pain. It was the 1st of March, and I share that with you, not gratuitously, but to say that I am here because of that bolded word right there, because of equity. And it is equity, and only equity, that would take me away from being with my daughter this morning. This is my baby. And this morning, I was not there in Miami to wish her a happy birthday. And that is emotional. That is real. But she knows, because I'm living away from them right now, that the only thing that would take me away from them is something that is true to my values, to our family values. And so, again, I wanted to let you know that when I say I'm happy to be here and that I want to be here, I hope that you will see her face and hear that it is my truth. All right. So moving on, I have just put the word equity in that title slide, and equity can mean any number of things, and our work is written with jargon. I want to acknowledge that. And so I want to be very clear that when I say equity, I'm thinking about outcomes. I'm thinking not about who we let in our doors. I'm not thinking about access. I'm not thinking about diversity. I'm thinking about looking at the outcomes of our work and ensuring not only that more and more students are successful. I want all students of all backgrounds to be more successful than they have been. I think we can do better. But this is a specific area where I think we can do a lot better. I want to see us close some of the gaps that I'm going to talk about. This image has been really helpful to me in differentiating some of these terms, right? And so often what I hear is I treat everyone fairly and I treat everyone the same way, and that is equality. It comes from a really good place, but if you notice on this kind of left-hand image, it doesn't really work for this little guy in the purple, right? He doesn't get to see. And so equity, is illustrated here in the middle, is about getting everyone to that same outcome. And that right side image is my objectively the truth. This is our reality. Here are some scholars and their version of this. We live in a fundamentally unequal, stratified, and biased culture. We do. Some of us have unearned privileges, and some of us have unearned disadvantage. I want to pause here on this very bleak note to say that this is not something that we have opted into, and this is not something that we want to see, I think, in most cases. I believe that this is true, that we are fundamentally good people, and that a lot of what's happening is invisible to most of us. Again, we are not working to disadvantage people. This is built into the fabric of our country, the fabric of the history of our country, as Kendi has chronicled very well, and I'll give you a reference later. But if this is fundamentally our society, then I think we have to go to that previous illustration and think about what we do to get to this middle, to get all students from all groups to the very important outcomes toward which we work. Yeah. And so with that, my goal today, you should know this about me too. I work in backward design. That's how my brain works, and very goal-oriented. And so my one goal, because we don't have a lot of time, and I've learned, right, to keep it narrow, my one goal for us this morning is I'm going to extend an invitation. And my invitation to you is to join me on a learning journey that I've been on now for, maybe 7 to 10 years. And so it's important that I not present myself as the expert on equity or the scholar. This is not my field of scholarship. I studied composition, rhetoric, and I studied enrollment management. But this is a field that I have entered into because I feel it is so important to me, right? And so I invite you to join me on a journey that I think is very, very complementary to the work that you're doing here in aligning curricula. And that is a journey toward cultural humility. And I'm going to kind of break that down. So this is my, please RSVP. We'll come back to this in a little while. And so I know that we, and Melody referenced this, I know that we're academics, and so inherently skeptical. Some people might not like that, but I love that. I love us. I love that about us. And so why? You're busy people. Why might you take me up on this invitation? Why might you say yes to this invitation and join me on the learning journey? What does it look like? What does it mean for you? And how much more work is it going to be, right? So I'm going to break it down. I know that maybe not all of us are going to be motivated by the same reasons that I am, and that's fine. I wouldn't expect that. But in case you didn't notice, and you, I don't know, you were living under a rock, this is our reality. America, right? It's a makeover. I think it's a beautiful makeover. Some people describe it, more bleakly. I will acknowledge that. And locally, Orlando's ranked the 26th most diverse city in America. So by virtue of where we are, who we are, and the ways that we and our students are changing, I think it necessitates this work. We are no longer homogeneous institutions of higher learning. And so as with everything else that's evolving, I think so too must our knowledge, and so too must our skills. In here in particular, this one I had pulled for a talk around Hispanic serving institutions. That is some pretty dark blue in our region, which reflects a 30 to 39% growth in the Hispanic community alone. Yeah, a lot more people looking like me have been moving in, and they got here not just 2 weeks ago. So the Hispanic growth has been remarkable. And again, that means taking the time to think about, what does that mean? What is it in my practice that I might refine, I might adjust in my understandings and my understandings of myself in light of the changing demographics? Specifically, when we think about the work that we do, this is no surprise. The faculty demographics change at a much slower rate. In most cases, we don't look like our students. Our administrators don't look like our students. And that's okay, right? I think that we have to be okay with that. There are many mechanisms in place. But what it means is that it's hard. Our work was always hard. Teaching has always been hard. And it is so important. I think that's okay too, for it to be difficult. But as Chavez and Longerbeam have been describing, now that we are teaching across cultures, there's an extra set of challenges, an extra set of opportunities as well. Our culture, each of us has a culture, and our students' cultures are different. And so how do we bridge some of those gaps that might be manifesting themselves in some of those outcomes that we find problematic? Now, I don't know about you, but this construct of cultural competence, it kind of scares me. That bar sounds really high. I don't want to go anywhere and say, have a badge or a badge on my LinkedIn profile that says that I am culturally competent, because that's dangerous. There are so many cultures and so many nuances and varied identities within them. How could I ever say certified, right? I don't know what kind of a rubric you want to use, but I don't want you to test me with it. And I, again, have been on this learning journey for a while. Instead, I really appreciate something that Ginsberg and Wildkowski have articulated as cultural humility. I think that is a target, that is a reasonable target. It means I acknowledge that culture matters, I want to work toward it, and I am working toward something, but I know that there is no endpoint, and that at some points I'm going to mess up. This part is really important to me. I want to say that I know that many of you may not want to think about inclusive teaching or culturally responsive teaching because there's a vulnerability there. There's a sense of what happens if I don't get it right, if I say the wrong thing, right? We know how much we hear every day about someone being outed for using the wrong term or a wrong word. And I find that extremely problematic because, of course, we're going to fumble it. This is new territory. It's uncharted territory. And so I want to say that in many of the conversations that I've had the pleasure of facilitating, I start with giving us permission to speak in first draft, right? To say, in this space, we believe that we are all fundamentally here for a very good reason, to help our students and more students be successful. And so if we fumble it, it means we're talking about it. And that's the only way we're going to see progress, right? So here, this is the invitation. It's to say, in addition to the work that you do, infused in the work you do in tandem on the side, might you also take some time to think about your own skills? Some of the skills that you may not have worked on in the past and perhaps didn't need to work on as much in light of all of these changes and in light of accomplishing the goals that you have set for yourself and for your teaching. So I wanted to then talk about where this work of cultural humility and of working toward equity fit into the foundational courses that you teach. And I'm really lucky because for the last 7 years, I got to work with faculty teaching foundational courses at FIU. We call them gateway courses. Working with them for 7 years across disciplines, almost all of the ones that you represent here. And it has been extremely gratifying work. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. But first I wanted to start with the national picture of gateway reform. The Gardner Institute had this project called Gateways to Completion. And so they've been working with colleges and universities all over the country. And I'm going to share some of what they found when institutions were thinking about student success in these foundational courses, because of course, what happens in those first courses bears so heavily on what happens in students' subsequent courses and their likelihood of graduating. And so I knew there were no historians here, so I was safe bringing some history stats, yeah. And so they had 32 institutions share their student performance in their history courses, and the average DFWI rate, right, so unsuccessful course performance, 25%, and then you notice this range, 5 to 48, 49, or 6 to 49. And what we know already is that student outcomes are not equitable here, right? I'm going to break that down a little further. Here we have DFW rates by ethnicity and race. That bar in the middle is the average, and so you know very clearly that there are some above and some below. These are gaps. We call these achievement gaps, we call them whatever we want to call them. I call them problematic. I call them, it's not okay. It means we have to do more, we have to do better. I want to pause and acknowledge that sometimes when we talk about achievement gaps, I worry. I worry that I am specifically and personally reinforcing someone's sense that there are some groups that are less able or less capable. And so I want to stop and to say that if you look at these gaps and you think to yourself, it is what it is. They're not as well prepared, or they're not as capable, or whatever hypotheses you might run through your mind, I want you to hold on to it. Because in a little bit, I'm going to show you what happens when faculty work together and intentionally to change this. And I'm going to not tell you now because I'm going to hold it in, but it's very exciting, yeah? So again, you look at this, you see these gaps, and you think to yourself, I bet I know why that is. Maybe it's because their faculty are rigorous, or maybe it's because poor earlier schooling, right? Maybe it's a lack of alignment. This is more data. Course completion gaps in accounting and bio and chem and comp and history and algebra and calculus and general psychology. No matter how you slice it, we have gaps by race and ethnicity. What's at stake for students is so much. Gateway course performance predicts retention, which predicts graduation. And the only way that the work that we do fully changes the lives of our students, of their communities, of their families, and of this world that we share is if they earn that credential. They're not getting to that end, and a lot of that has to do with what happens in the courses that you teach. That is a lot of responsibility. And when I taught comp, I felt that on my shoulders. I was welcoming my students into academia, and it was part of my job description and my responsibility to help them make a smooth transition so that they could be successful. Now, what can we do, right? Because that's pretty sad stuff. And I don't want to leave you with a sense of hopelessness. I wouldn't have said yes to the invitation if I didn't know and I hadn't seen what happens when we work on this. The work that you're doing today matters enormously. And again, I'm not saying that because I'm here. What happens when we don't work on alignment? In the absence of alignment, then students don't perform as well. And what happens in students' mind is that they internalize that failure or those struggles as their own and their own fault, right? So students don't know about the work that you're doing here in most cases. They don't know that the reason they didn't understand or couldn't be successful when they transitioned even within an institution, much less to another institution, was that the course content or constructs were not aligned, that the language or the terminology wasn't aligned, or that different assessments were being used. They don't know that. Especially students from underserved groups, when they don't perform well, they think, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Yeah? And so everything that we do to align our courses and to help students be successful is directly related to producing more equitable outcomes. I believe that. And so I applaud you for being here and for doing the work that you're going to do today. Here's how Winslow describes this. Without a well-articulated curriculum, a specific kind of cultural capital becomes the determining factor between success and failure. Yeah. I want to go back to the image because I don't want to prescribe. I don't prescribe. There is no way, no one pathway to equity. I'm going to share some ideas, but here I want to say that in general, what I am suggesting is that if your go-to is equality, I treat everyone the same way, I'm going to say maybe you think about that a little. Maybe you think about how you might differentiate since the rest of our world differentiates and has differentiated. My daughter with the big eyes did not choose neither her eyes nor her skin color nor being born to me or a zip code or all of the privileges that I have had and all of the education that I have had. But it pays dividends. And so, again, the general invitation is thinking about how we might differentiate what we do in our teaching. I want to share what our awesome FIU faculty did because it really, really was remarkable. Some of it is what you're doing here together right now, partnering. We talked about internal alignment. They realized that we had tons of internal misalignment. So across courses, across the same section, sections of the same course, within the math pathway at FIU, across disciplines. So we did work on internal alignment. They partnered, though, with others of us. They realized this is really hard. who else is around on this campus who is a partner or who could be a partner in this work. And our Center for Teaching and Learning, where I was a key partner, but also our analytics teams, our data people, who helped us collect more data, disaggregate the data, and figure out if it was working. Yeah. They also asked a lot more questions of their students, of our students, right? What is it like to be a student in our foundational courses? What is it really like? What are the sticky points? Why are you here? This was really powerful. When our faculty asked students, why are you here? What drives you? And then some, in varied ways, made connections between the coursework and students' internal motivations. It really was beautiful to see. And they did take the time to think about what the literature and what both the concepts and the practices of inclusive and culturally responsive teaching look like. They came to workshops, they did some of this work on their own, and so a number of things. Again, this is just a sampling. I don't do justice to all of the work that they did. I want to stress perhaps this first point, is that they work together because, again, they realized this is so hard. We don't want to do it at the person level. And when we work together, of course, we see much more pronounced outcomes. They added structure to their courses. I'm going to include in the references a couple of publications by my colleagues who, with some small tweaks in structure, saw enormous gains. Usually these are the slides that you put at the end, but I'm flipping it all today. If you accept my invitation, I kind of curated a list, and I was very careful because I know I didn't want to give you too many things to do. But here are some books. Some are books, some are articles that are short, and we will share these. On this slide, there are a couple of things that are really small. They're not even article or book length. And in the middle are implicit association tests out of Harvard. An important first step in moving toward equity is looking inward. What are our implicit biases? It doesn't feel good. I'm gonna tell you that. I am a staunch feminist, and I did the gender-based IET, and I was not happy. And I did a number of other ones that I wasn't happy about. So this is, again, not about our conscious beliefs, but about the implicit biases that we have and associations as a result of having been born and raised wherever we were born and raised, which again was not a conscientious choice of ours. The last one also, the Transparency in Learning and Teaching, is a project out of the University of Nevada at Las Vegas. Small tweaks to course assignments where we clarify expectations for students, we clarify the purpose of our work, and they have seen remarkable gains, particularly for students from historically underserved groups. Yeah, so those are some quick ones. And then you're wondering, I hope, did it work? All this talk and all that work that your faculty did, what happened? I'll share a few. Students told us that their Gen Ed, that their intro gateway courses, they really understood them to be really relevant and important to their lives. Really not a very common response from students from their introductory courses. We also saw a correlation that when they saw their courses as more relevant, they spent more time studying. And we loved that. That made us very, very happy. Our college algebra is the star. Pass rates had hovered around 30%, which is awful. And now they are consistently around 70%. That took so much work on the part of our math faculty. The average number of Gateway courses that our students failed decreased by a good percentage. This one's my favorite. That's why it gets to expand. Over the course of the project, we had, and this is now I haven't been there for a while, so they haven't given me the updated stats, so I'm going to say it's higher. 5,462 instances of additional course passing. There would have been more than 5,000 moments when students looked online reluctantly, saw their grades, and thought to themselves, failing grade does not only impact students on a psychological level of I failed. That's bad enough. I failed, perhaps I am a failure, perhaps I don't belong here. It also has very real, tangible impacts on their financial aid, on their ability to progress. And so to say that because of the work that faculty did, we reduced these many instances is really, really impactful, and why I get up and work as what I do every morning. I wanted to close with a couple of examples, a couple of what I consider equity exemplars, right? A little inspiration. This one is hot off the press. I just sent it to Melody, one of our colleagues from biology who closed the achievement gaps. These are the same students. They are as diverse. They had the same background preparation. She changed what she did in her classroom. The gaps are no longer there. I say that especially to those of you who had other hypotheses. If you change what you do in your classroom, this is possible. This is at FIU. My colleague in the University of Rhode Island, a very different student demographic, large introductory biology course, happens to be the same discipline. He doesn't have any either. Yeah? His colleagues do. His colleagues do in the same institution, in the same class, with the same content. This is part of his pedagogy. He is determined not to see those gaps, just as Sat in the previous slide is determined not to see those gaps, and they don't see the gaps. And in case you're wondering about their assessments or whether they watered things down or compromised rigor, I will say that they are perhaps more rigorous than their colleagues, and they have to be, because otherwise people say, wait a second, you probably watered it down, right? This caused a lot of attention to you, and sometimes in not a positive way. I wanted to then share a final slide before I open up for any questions that you might have. And that is, I didn't realize this until yesterday, something that is closer to home. Because not only do I remember where I was 13 years ago on the 1st of March, I remember where I was 2 years ago on the 1st of March. That almost sounds made up. I get it. Right? I couldn't have made it up. But 2 years ago, on the 1st of March, I had been invited to come to Orlando, to the Lake Nona campus of Valencia for a meeting. My boss couldn't be there, and so I was very lucky. She said, Isis, can you go? It is a convening of Excelencia in Education, a group of institutions that are Hispanic-serving institutions, and they're going to think together with the Excelencia leaders about how do we do this work? How do we make sure that we not just enroll Hispanic students, which is how you become a Hispanic-serving institution, but how do we make sure that we serve them? What does it mean to serve? And this group was going to have that conversation. How could I miss that, right? And so on that morning, I did wake up with my baby, and I did sing to her and give her presents and love, and then I drove myself here in a hurry. And she forgave me. And on that day, this blue-eyed woman stood up, and she said stuff, and I had never seen her, heard of her, I had no idea who she was, frankly. And she shared another example of what it means to be committed to and to enact equity that I wanted to share with you. Again, because I thought it was uncanny. That again, this was the 1st of March, and you never forget when you miss your child's birthday. And so Kathleen stood up and she shared that they were worried at Valencia about undocumented students. And even though we welcome them with open arms, they fear coming. They're scared. They live in fear. And so they couldn't get them to come to campus for an open house to talk about undocumented students because they wouldn't come. That's like a trap, right? You can't all of you come to one place and have that be public. So instead, they had convenings around aid and affordability, finances, right? Which are, of course, top of mind for so many students of all backgrounds. And she knew that in that group there would be students for whom this would be their question. This would be what differentiated them. And she looked at a son in the eyes, she shared, and she said, sí puedes estudiar aquí. No necesitas documentos para estudiar aquí. And she speaks beautiful Spanish, better than mine. And she said, he didn't admit or acknowledge or ask about documentation, but she knew that could be on his mind. And his eyes watered, and so too did the eyes of his mother, who sat beside him. And they knew that a Valencia degree was a possibility. She looked at them. She did not treat them all equally. She knew that this was a specific and distinctive fear that they might have. And then she looked at his mom and she said, usted también puede estudiar aquí. You can study here too. Perhaps, it is very customary, she may not have had that opportunity in her home country. And that is one of the distinguishing features of our system of higher education, is that it is open and accessible to us regardless of something like age. I say that to say that we, from whatever position we occupy, whatever role you play, we have an opportunity. We will have countless opportunities to work toward equity. And I hope that you might join me in so doing. Thanks. I hope that we have some time for questions. Good, and we do. Good. I was working toward that. And I made a note here, but I'm going to say it again. If you have a question that you think you don't know how to word or you might get it wrong, please have, I know that this is a lot of people to feel safe in, right? That's bigger than we usually feel safe in. But I hope that we will listen with grace, recognizing that we're all trying and that we might fumble. That's okay.
In the last year, I was working with a student, one of our VA students, who had multiple challenges in every way that you can imagine. They could have challenges, and they needed to get through Chem 2. That was the last chemistry class they needed to get through. And they were really, really struggling. And I was working with Rachel at our ADA. I don't know if Rachel's here today, but my discussions with Rachel really made me understand the difference between equity and equality, and in a way that I had not ever understood. We didn't get there the first semester, but we got there the second semester, and every time I see her, I remember that there's ways to do things that can make it happen for every student if we just find the right combination. So if I recommend talking to your ADA folks, if you're trying to see that difference between equity, because they are the experts. They are amazing at explaining that difference between equality and equity. And thank you, Rachel.
Thank you for sharing that.
So my question would be could Valencia and all the Direct Connect partners help our students when they transfer to UCF? Would you join the cause to allow, especially for equity, our students that need services like teachers that teach at, because UCF is this research institution, but a lot of our students, they're so used to teachers being there. And so could we lobby as a great group to have more teachers for when our students, like as an example, I have a single mom that can only come at night. She has 2 more classes in accounting, and she has an okay job, and so she's able to get a better job, but there is no services, there's no tutor that she can go to. And then I have other students that are in these big, long online classes, and they're so used to at the great institutions of our community colleges, our state colleges, they're used to getting us, and a lot of the professors at UCF don't have available office hours that they can come to. So would you join our cause to have more equity for our students so that they can have the services they deserve when they transfer to UCF? Are you able to do that?
I'm not sure what I'm committing to, but But yes, I think that's part of why I appreciated this group and this conversation, because it is going to take all of us. And because what happens between one institution and the other can be so important.
We just learned that UCF has a lot of money in their reserve, so it would be great if they could start utilizing it for undergrad students and not just the research. You can do both. You can hire more teaching faculty. Thank you.
Yes. I'd like to rephrase that as a question, right? What else might we be able to do through our partnerships to work toward equity? Whether it's pedagogical, whether it's staffing, whether it's services. I know that so much is already happening. Perhaps if we have that focused conversation around equity, we might come to a few additional things that we could do. I'm certain that we would be happy to have those conversations. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, the way you present that. It's just a beautiful way to reframe and see it through that lens. And I was really touched by that. I really think that it's another way of, one of the things that as all this partnership does is meeting the students where they are. And I think that that's what we're looking at, right? How do we bring that equity up and getting them to the finish line together? So thank you.
I love that. Thank you. This idea of meeting them where they are, it's a key reason that FIU invested in that Gateway Project. Our students do not live on campus. Our FIU students don't live on campus. Where they are is in our classrooms. They may not come to events. We want them to, but they may not. They may not come to support services. They do go to class, virtual or physical. And so many of our efforts then had to live within the courses, within the curricula, and were in the hands of our faculty. And so I want to say that, for example, while I was there, our Center for Teaching went from being a center of 2, I was one of 2, to a center of 11, partnering with faculty, being able to do a lot more of this work toward culturally responsiveness. One other thing that we do that I want to share that I'm really proud of was to put equity on the table in an official way. We had never articulated, what does excellent teaching mean here? What are we working toward? And so about a year before I left, we articulated that excellent teaching at FIU is learning-centered. It's about learning, it's not about us. It's evidence-based, both the evidence we collect in our courses and the evidence from which we might draw. And it's culturally responsive, because that's where we are and that's who we serve. And that, I'm even more proud to say, is being folded into all of our teaching evaluation practices, so that faculty can work toward this vision in a formative way with the same grace, I hope, that with which we had this discussion. Another question or a suggestion for your colleagues?
I just wanted to give a shout out to a program at UCF that I think is still in the pilot phase of it. It's a peer mentorship program, and it's for undergraduates. So I actually got an undergraduate peer mentor in my class for this semester. I teach speech. And it's a student who was successful in my class last semester, and he works with the students individually. So he holds office hours, and he helps the students with their projects. I think it's a wonderful program, and I think it speaks to what you're talking about in helping students become successful, because I think sometimes we come across as perhaps unapproachable, and I try not to come across that way, and I've been very aware of that, even recently, thinking about how my office looks and rearranging it and bringing more of my books home rather than having a big bookshelf of books that look, I don't know, just unapproachable. So I'm trying to find ways to make my class more approachable, and I think that peer mentorship program is a really great program to take advantage of, and that we should probably try to find more funding for that.
100%. Melody says she's on it. I'm so happy that you said that, because I would have later said, I can't believe that I didn't mention how instrumental our students were to those outcomes. We have FIU has the country's biggest undergraduate learning assistant program, And so many of those courses where we saw the biggest gains had teams of undergraduates helping each other. They are also invaluable allies and partners in cultural responsiveness, because we may not look like our students, but they look like our students because they are our students. So they can be really, really helpful partners in this work. I think I saw a hand back there. Yeah. I'm coming. You're good. That's okay. Get my steps in.
Good morning. My name is Samantha. I am a program advisor for students who are seeking degrees in education, hoping to become future educators. A lot of this work is especially interesting to me because as a Latina, as a feminist, I believe that cultural competency is at the root of what we do every day with our students as advisors. We need to be able to understand who's coming into our office, where they're coming from, to the best of our ability. So I guess my suggestion / question for you is, while this is obviously incredibly important to talk about this from a faculty standpoint, we need to also be thinking about student services and how the people in student services are being trained to work with the students that come through our office. SSB, the Advising Center on West Campus, has, we serve over 23,000 students a year for advising. That's probably more than that, but it feels like that much. So I'm hoping that we can partner with you, if that's your realm or whoever it is, to get the cultural competency in our offices working with our students.
Awesome. I just want to agree. Everywhere, right? Each of us who works and does this important work, these are all of the students that we serve. Ma'am?
I have struggled with the idea of equal treatment versus equitable treatment in the classroom. And one reason is because students tend to expect equal treatment. What are some of the dangers or pitfalls that I should be aware of in trying to be equitable, which might not necessarily be equal?
Thank you. Was everyone able to hear the question? Yeah, this danger of moving from equality to equity, specifically because sometimes students expect and are looking for us to treat everyone equally, right? And not to see some differentials. Did I do justice to your question? Okay, want to make sure. I think this is a really, really important point, and I want to clarify that when we're working toward equity, there are some things that do not change and must not change. One of them is the bar. The bar must always be high. It must always be very high. If the bar is not high for learning, learning is not maximized. It's one of the things that we know about how learning works. If the bar is not high, then students aren't motivated. Sometimes students don't perform well in courses because they say, that's not so hard, and they don't put in the time and the effort. The bar has to also be high for equity, because if we water down our degrees and pass students, then we run the risk of giving them credentials that don't represent knowledge and abilities. College degrees change lives, but they only change lives if they represent knowledge and skills that those students can take with them, those people can take with them into the world. So the one thing that I'll say that we don't change where the bar is for anyone, and we maybe lift it a little. We are transparent about our expectations and much more transparent than we have been for everyone. Assessments don't change either at all, of course. Our assessments have to be consistent. What then differs? It differs the kinds of feedback that we give, how we shape that feedback, what we include in that feedback in light of what we know about our students. It might entail giving students space to make connections between what matters to them and our disciplines, and giving all of them that opportunity, knowing that that strategy might be more impactful for some than for others. It might also mean, as many faculty have begun doing in large introductory courses, getting that first quiz column in your Excel spreadsheet, sorting by how students did without looking to see where they came from, and sending differentiated messages. Awesome job, keep it up, to the students who did really well. Sometimes we forget them, right? And then you were close and you're in the right. I want to make sure that you're successful. Here are some tips for you in the middle, and then a differentiated comment for the students who are not performing well, based on their initial performance in your class, the sooner the better. The sooner we give them some feedback, both they have a sense of how they're doing, we have a sense of doing, and an encouraging message that says, I have designed this course so that this is still a possibility for you. You can still be successful. I believe in you. I have high standards and every conviction that you can be successful. The literature calls this wise feedback. I would look it up. I think it's awesome. I think we all need a little wise feedback. So does that help? Where we can differentiate in ways that uphold, maintain rigor, the same level of expectations, the same assessments. It's how we get there. I'll share one example. I taught a lot of non-native English speakers in my writing class. They needed to work harder. They needed to put in more time. They needed to spend more time copy editing for things like grammar. In my class, their grammatical correctness counted much less than it would have counted in any other class. It did, because I wasn't there to teach them grammar, I was there to teach them thinking. However, I would do them a grave disservice if I didn't say, when you get to another class, someone is not going to read your paper as I have read it, with generous eyes, listening for your insights. I want them to hear you. And so because I want them to hear you and what you have to say and the quality of your ideas, it is essential for you to spend more time in the writing center, spend more time polishing it, because I cannot be part of you not being heard. I had to differentiate.
So the one thing as I'm hearing you talk, and I think my comment may bridge the faculty member over here and then the young lady that's in student services on this side. We talk a lot in the aggregate, right? So my feeling on this is that equality is at the aggregate level, and then equity is at the individual level. So somewhat coming to what you were saying is that you set the bar at the equality level in your classrooms and how you work with students, but then you bring it to the equality level on the individual. So what we're doing at UCF, especially around online learning, and now some of our direct connect pieces as well, is the coaching. So we get to know the student on the individual level, and we understand where they're at as the individual, and we work to what you were saying before, how you worked with the student to read their papers and then found those students that needed extra nudges, and sending them messages and sending them other avenues or to other resources that are going to help them as an individual.
Awesome. Awesome. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being here. I know how much you have on your plate, and you have taken the time out to be here to work together. I thank you for the work that you're going to do this afternoon, and I thank you for your time. Reach out. I am only a couple minutes away. I can't point which way because I get lost still. Oops. But I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And again, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Isis. Please join me. I think you deserve another round of appreciative applause. So thank you very much. So next I want to introduce a presenter this is a follow-up presentation. So those of you who were attending the conference last year, we had Dr. Lori Dunlop-Pyle and Dr. Erin Saeda from UCF out of our math and chemistry departments talk to you about a survey that they were putting together with transfer students. And so now I'd like to reintroduce Lori, who's going to give you some updates and a little bit of a report out on progress to date.
Thank you. I know a lot of you were here last year, but I'm also assuming that there are some fresh faces who weren't here to hear what Erin and I talked about last year. So, forward through here. I guess I should mention the others who've collaborated with us. So back in 2017, Erin and I, along with Jason Dodge from Transfer and Transition Services and Jim Cooney from Physics, began working on a project through the Florida Consortium of Metropolitan Universities to try to help students be more successful in STEM majors when they transfer to UCF. So this is part of a Helmsley grant, and the Helmsley grant has some different NICs, Network Improvement Communities. We were part of the Successive Transfer students majoring in STEM, and then there were also some other NICs that were working on other projects as well. So in the summer of 2017, we started looking at data, and we also started looking at literature to see what kind of information was out there talking about the project, so we could try to come up with a plan to help students be more successful. So this was some of the data that we took a look at. We looked at a lot of data that summer and read a lot of papers, but this was some of the data that we looked at. So we were looking at the difference between Florida College System transfer students who transfer to UCF with an AA versus our first time in college students. So you can see there, we've got our overall enrollment, but when you compare the STEM enrollment from our first time in college students to our transfer students, first of all, you notice quite a disparity there. You can see we had 18% STEM enrollment for our transfer students. We had 31% for our first time in college students. Okay? However, when you start looking at the breakdown of those STEM enrollments, notice that they're fairly similar. For example, you see from our transfer students, 73% were enrolled in engineering courses or an engineering major versus 75% for our first time in college students. And when you look down the line, again, you see very, very similar patterns there. So that was something that was really interesting to us. Okay? So the next thing we started looking at were attrition rates, the rates at which our students are leaving our majors. And so if you look here, over on the left, of course, our transfer students, and on the right, our first time in college students. Overall, give or take, you'll notice a pattern that our students, our transfer students are leaving at about twice the rate of our first time in college students. Okay, that was surprising to us. We knew there was definitely a difference. We didn't know that it was that much. And you can look down there and you can see the differences. So, you know, we knew we had a big job. Now, this is data that came from curriculum alignment. This was data that we had collected, that we had looked at in mathematics, in our mathematics group. And we looked at a couple of sets of data. We had data collected from the years from 2009 to 2014, and from 2011 to 2016. And we compared all sorts of different factors. But this is just part of the data that we had looked at in curriculum alignment. But comparing our first time in college student success to our transfer student success for MAC 2311, which is Calculus 1 with Analytic Geometry, MAC 1140, which is Pre-Calculus Algebra, and then MAC 1105, which is College Algebra. And so when you look down the line, for Calculus 1, MAC 2311, you see our first time in college students are successful at about twice the rate. When you go down to College Algebra, the last one listed, MAC 1105, notice our FTIC students are succeeding at about 3 times the rate of our transfer students. So that was some more data that was concerning. But if you look at what happens, sort of as you look at the data as the courses become a little more advanced. So MAC 2312 is Calculus 2, MAC 2313 is Calculus 3. So as you go through the courses and the courses progress, notice there's still a difference, but it's less pronounced. So, we looked at this data, and of course, we've looked at the data in curriculum alignment, and of course, everyone has their theories as to what's going on, but we've started thinking about the fact that we have all these theories, but we haven't asked students themselves. What's going on? What are some factors that are contributing to these numbers we've been seeing for a long time? Okay. So this is a timeline of how our project progressed. So summer 2017 was when we looked at that data, and we read papers, we read literature, and we started also orienting ourselves with existing initiatives. We started learning that we'd have an idea, and then one of us would say, oh, well, someone's already doing that. There are all sorts of initiatives going on that we didn't realize. So kind of got all that together, and then we started thinking about the fact that we wanted to create this survey to gain more data, more knowledge from the students themselves. So we worked on a draft of that survey, and then we wanted some feedback. So last year, whenever I spoke to you, we were soliciting feedback from all of you to try to learn how we could best ask these questions, what questions we should be asking. And we took all that back with us. So we also, that following summer, so that was summer of last year, we also asked some transfer students themselves for some feedback. We only had feedback from a couple of students, but it was great insight into things that we should be asking. So here's some examples of some of the feedback that we received that we incorporated into our survey. So from curriculum alignment, there was some wording that we changed to make it sound a little bit more like student wording. In the question, there was a question inquiring about obstacles to success. We included an option about culture shock at UCF. Was that an issue when you came to UCF that was an obstacle to your success? And then at the end, we also added an open-ended comment box to which we had a fair percentage of the students who did give us some open-ended comments. That was actually a recommendation from both you and also from the students who gave us feedback. Okay. So here are some of the, here's some examples. This isn't everything, of course, but these are just some examples of some of the feedback that we received from our students that we use to help modify our questions. So this is still the same. It was just a couple. We only had maybe like 2 or 3. No, I think it was actually maybe 4. Not a lot, but less than 5 who ended up participating in the focus group and giving us feedback. But it was valuable feedback that we received. So the free response section, again, that was from both groups. We included that. In terms of one of the questions asked about resources that they had used at UCF. And a couple of them mentioned some non-academic resources that we just hadn't thought of, and we included those as well. So the Recreation and Wellness Center, that was one of them, and the Counseling Center, or Counseling and Psychological Services, CAPS, we included that as well. And then we also added a select all that apply to some of our questions. Okay. So that kind of takes us through our timeline. So we got our feedback in spring of 2017 and summer of 2018. And then we had hoped, our original goal had been to give the survey at the end of spring of 2018. It just didn't work out that way. So we gave our first run of the survey in the fall of 2018, the beginning of the fall, like the end of August, beginning of September. It ran for a couple weeks. We realized that because of the timing, our goal had been to survey the group who had come in in, I guess, 2017, so fall of 2017. Our goal had been to capture them at the end of that first year. So in waiting until fall, so a full year, we didn't catch everyone who had started. So, those who would have left, we of course didn't catch with the survey. So one of the goals that we do have in the spring of this year is to revise our survey and re-administer it again. Okay, so I have some of the data from some of the questions that we thought would interest you. So you'll see the data in a couple of different ways. So first we've got the bar graph just to give you an idea of the differences in the number. I believe we had 33 respondents. And then I also have a table that's a little easier to read than the bar graph. So the next slide will be that table. So this question was, how many credit hours did you take during your most recent fall or spring semester? So the one that has the most responses there was 12 to 16 hours. So here's that data in a form that's a little easier for you to read. So, and you can see we had about 30% who were just taking 6 to 11 hours. No one was taking less than 6 hours. About 2/3 who were taking 12 to 16 hours. And then we had one person who was taking 17 or more hours, which seemed pretty ambitious. Okay. So how many hours outside of class do you typically spend studying per week? Now keep in mind that we just saw that most of those students were taking kind of the typical about 12 hours. So we know that by that rule of 2 hours outside of class for each hour in class, we would hope they'd be studying about 24 hours. That's not happening. 13 to 18 hours in the middle is the response that had the answer that had the most responses. One of the things that we talked about to a group of advisors about this last fall, and one of the comments that they had about this was to kind of restructure how we had our answers, and that's something that we're going to incorporate in our next round of the survey. The idea being that whatever we wanted as sort of our target number, which would be, for those who are taking 12 hours, 24 hours of studying outside of class, put that in the middle, and then put a couple of options with more than 24 hours after it and some options with less than 24 hours behind it, so that students could hopefully, if nothing else, take away from the survey the fact that that's kind of what they should be aiming for. So that's one of the modifications we're going to make to the next round. But here you can see the numbers a little better than that bar graph. So we had about a quarter who were spending 6 or less hours per week studying for all of their courses. And then another quarter who were spending about 7 to 12 hours, give or take another quarter who are spending 13 to 18 hours, and then that 19 to 24 hours, which is still a little on the conservative side, we had about 15%, and more than 24 hours, we only had about 9%. So that was something that was a little concerning to us too. average overall. We had some who felt that their knowledge was below average or very weak. Here are those numbers. So average, about a third of them thought it was average. Above average, about a quarter, and then very strong, about 16%. Our very weak or below average, we had about a quarter there who felt that they were very weak or below average when they came into UCF. And keep in mind, they've been at UCF for over a year, so they came in and they've had a year to reflect on how they felt about that. Okay. So which of the following statements best fits your experience at UCF? So the first, well, the one in the middle, of course, you can see has the most responses. So here you can read a little better what the answers were. My STEM courses have been less challenging than I thought they would be. Okay, there was about 13% who thought that. A little more than half thought that they were as challenging as they expected them to be, and about a third thought they were more challenging than they expected they would be. So this is the question about obstacles to their success. So during the past year, what factor or factors, so they could select more than one, do you consider to be a significant obstacle to your success? So right away you can see that there are about 4 that seem to be the largest obstacles. Okay. Here's the data. So the 4 that had the most, financial issues, that was about almost 18%. The size of UCF, the large number of students, we had about 14% who said that was a large obstacle. Family or personal obligations, 16%. And then if you go down to number 6, that was the 4th one that was kind of large, and that one was a little bit of a surprise to us in terms of the magnitude of those who responded. My physical or emotional well-being. So that was concerning to us as well, that we saw that. And then another question asks, that you're going to see here, asks about what resources you used. Okay, so keep in mind those issues that students are having. Okay, so what campus resources at UCF have you found to be helpful? Okay, so unfortunately, we're not seeing, we have a lot of resources available for our students to address some of these issues, and unfortunately, we're not seeing them utilizing those resources. The one at the very top that you see that has a large number of responses, that's I have not used any campus resources. Okay. The other one that you see that's the largest, that's the UCF Rec and Wellness Center. Okay, that's our gym, basically. We don't. So the question is, we know these are transfer students, but do we know how many were direct connect or just transferring from like another 4-year institution? We don't have that. I guess that's another question. Well, we could look that up because we do know we do know who the students are, so that's information we could look up, or we could maybe incorporate that into a question. No, we don't. We don't have the difference. And let me mention something in terms of the Rec and Wellness Center there. So notice that was the one that had the largest number of responses. We actually inquired about that, and it turns out that the Rec and Wellness Center actually has some programs for transfer students. So we suspect that that's why you're seeing that large number. They have programs where transfer students can come in and they can become involved with some intramural sports and just some kind of get to know you kind of programs that they have for specifically our transfer students. I know I saw a question over here. Yeah, these were ones who had been there for a full year. So that's another reason why we want to catch students at the end of spring, because we want to catch the ones who may not necessarily come back the following fall. So these are ones who came back the following fall. So they started fall of 17 and they were returning fall of 18. Okay, and we also hope that by doing the survey again in the end of the spring, not only will we catch the students at the end of the first year who may be thinking about leaving, but we also hope that we'll have a larger number of respondents as well. But if you look at the numbers here, it was about a quarter who had not used any campus resources at all. And then remember that one of those large when you looked at the issues students were having, many of them talked about their having trouble with emotional or physical well-being, and that being an obstacle to their success. If you look here, we have counseling and psychological services. That's answer number 3. We only have about 4% who use that. And then, let's see, I thought we had used, okay, it's student health services. It's number 6. That was about 8%. So, those are some great resources that students can be using. And UCF Cares, if you're not familiar with it, yes? Although I can say, we can recommend that, but that doesn't mean they do it. Recommending it and doing it are 2 different things. So, but transfer and transition services, we only saw about 6% who said they used that. In case you're not familiar with a couple of these, use Knight's Pantry. That's basically a food bank for our UCF students. So those who may need either food or hygiene items, things like that, they can go to Knight's Pantry and they can get those for free. UCF Cares, that's an office where basically if students were having some type of issue and they weren't sure where to get the resources they needed, or even, it doesn't even have to be that a student takes the initiative to go themselves. If we have a faculty member or even anyone in the UCF community who is concerned for the well-being of a student, we can fill out a report letting UCF Cares know that we're concerned about the welfare of the student. And it could be a multitude of reasons. It could be, behavior we've seen in class. It could be that maybe we think that the student is having homelessness issues, things like that. We can report that. We can report it and we can in such a way that the student knows who it was, or we can report it anonymously. And then UCF Cares makes contact with that student and tries to follow up and get them those services they need. Again, assuming that they want that help. That's an assumption there too. And then you can see one of the other things we asked there too was none of the resources I've tried have been helpful, and there are about 6% who said that. Other, there were about 8% who selected other, and we did get some feedback in the free response in terms of what other was. Okay, so which of the following best captures how well you feel you've adjusted to life at UCF? This is another question where we're going to adjust the answers when we redo this. So if you look at the answers we have, number 1 is very well. The adjustment to life at UCF has gone very smoothly. That was more than half. Somewhat poorly. We want something in between there, in between very well and somewhat poorly. So, pretty well or well, something in there. But about 29% said somewhat poorly, 6% said very poorly, and then we have about 9% who said other, and we had a free response for what other meant there too. So this is, I think, a good one that a lot of you may be interested in hearing about. So what resources do you think would have been helpful to you while at your state college before transferring to UCF? So the one that has the most responses was opportunities to participate in STEM-focused clubs and extracurricular activities. Some of the literature that we read when we were initially talking about putting together our survey and trying to get ideas talked about creating STEM-focused clubs and extracurricular activities that bridged between the state college and the university. So that seemed like something that would interest them. And more than a quarter there said that they would enjoy doing that. And then also about a little under 20%, opportunities to visit UCF and meet students from your state college who've already transferred to UCF. This was something we thought was very interesting to present to all of you, because this is something that together we could work on between our university and the state colleges, was trying to work out some types of opportunities to visit UCF for students who are majoring in STEM and transferring to UCF, or trying to create some clubs that go between the schools. So that was something we thought was really interesting. A workshop or online modules discussing study skills. You can see those had a few, but those two, well, and then time management workshops or online modules, that was another one that had a lot of responses. And actually, that's something at UCF that we do have through SARC. We do have online modules that students can complete once they get to UCF through SARC, which is our Student Academic Resource Center, by the way. Okay, so that was not all of the questions, but those were the highlights from the ones we thought would interest you the most. So now I'll open the floor to discussions. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Tom.
Did you do any type of correlation between the answer to the number of hours spent studying for the courses a week and then the number of hours employed to see if the ones that were full-time employed were the ones that were answering the 0 to 6 or vice versa?
Yeah, we have not looked at that. I mean, we can look at that. We just haven't had a chance to go that deep. And also because that was our first time going through the data, a lot of what we were looking at was just to kind of get a feel for what we were going to see, especially since we only had 33 respondents, and to try to revise everything to get a better round this time. And hopefully when we do it this time, we're also going to get more respondents. So then maybe once we have a couple sets of data, we can start to look more in depth at things like that.
Yeah. Two things, not about the survey, but about the original data. Transfer students have a much larger attrition rate, right? When do they leave? Do you know?
I don't know specifically.
Is it the first semester, first year?
Well, that data that you looked at was after 1 year. That was so the cohort who had come in the year before. Right. Now, when they leave, it's also, that didn't differentiate between students who left the university completely or students who just transferred to another major. That was just looking at students who were leaving STEM majors. So they may have stayed at UCF and gone to a business major, for example.
All right. Well, that was my second question: is where were they going? Were they leaving or?
Right. We didn't have that data, but it could be either one. I know there was a question over here.
I was just going to ask, do you have any similar statistics for FTIC students? Only FTIC.
I don't, but I know we do some surveys for some first-time in college students. So that's something else we could look to compare the data between the two sets. But yeah, I personally don't have that data here. Yes.
So on this similar note, like, have you considered, like I know you're talking about rewording some of your questions that are similar to those that perhaps are on the NESI, like wording, trying to align the wording so that you could use that as a point of comparison, since that's something that you collect that data as an institution?
That's something else that we're going to look at as well. Yeah.
You had a question up there that said, why do you feel you weren't successful? And one of the answers was the culture. How deep, is there a free response in that as to what about the culture they don't like? Is it, could it be just something as similar as class size is too big,
Well, that was actually one of,
there's so much going on, I don't study because I'm doing all these other activities, or what it is?
I'm trying to remember because it's been a while since I looked at that one, but we actually there was an answer about the class size there. That was a possibility. That was something else that they had a response that they could actually say class size was an issue. And I can't remember if we specifically have free response there or if we did have the free response at the end that captured some more information. So I don't remember if we had free response on that one as well.
How many students did the survey get sent out to?
I don't remember what the number was, but it was definitely a lot more than 33.
That was my only question about all of this. Do you feel comfortable making these conclusions based on a sample size of 33?
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is just the first run. This is just a follow-up to what we did last year when we came to talk to you, so you know where we are with our project. And that's why we're not writing any papers or anything on it. This was just our first run. We were trying to see, we're really trying to revise it to get it better. And then what we hope to do is collect data over several different years and see if we can look at patterns there. We're not looking at just the 33. We're definitely not done with this project. And a big part of it was we knew that we weren't going to get as many respondents because of the timing of it, but we were hoping that those responses that we did get would help us to revise it and to better it so that we could get more data.
What are you thinking of doing to get more students to respond?
Well, the timing, I think, is the biggest one, is just because, like I said, we did this at the beginning of the fall semester, which we knew wasn't going to be the best timing, but it was better than not submitting it at all. So we just wanted an initial run just to see what kind of answers we were getting, and then we're going to send it out again at the end of the spring semester.
We're going to take 2 more questions, and I identified the 2.
So if I'm correct in understanding, this was a sample from 2 classes, is that correct? Or what courses were you looking at?
No, this was sent out to all UCF transfer students in STEM majors at the end. So from the students, the transfer students who were STEM majors who started in fall of 2017, this survey was sent to that group.
And so the investigation was looking at their STEM courses in the major. Is that an accurate statement, or?
Their experience. We were asking them, I mean, you saw the questions we were asking. So we were asking them about their experiences with their STEM majors. So, and their time at UCF, just to get a better feel for what was going on with our students.
Okay, and then the DFW rates, right? What classes were you looking at for those? Or were you?
The DFW rate that I showed you, those were from the courses that were listed there. That was from college algebra, calculus 2, MAC 1140, which is pre-calculus algebra, calculus 3. I think I said calculus
Lower
1.
level courses?
Well, those are all 1 or 2,000 level courses.
So where the line of my question is this: so if you're asking transfer students about those examining those courses for transfer students, the hope of Direct Connect is that they have completed those lower level courses before coming to UCF. So those courses that they're taking at lower level while they're at UCF, the hope of Direct Connect is that they're taking those and they're getting transfer ready before they come into UCF.
Right.
So it to me, it almost seemed like an apple-orange comparison a little bit.
Well, that wasn't data taken from those students. That data was taken over 5-year periods. That's data that we generated as part of our curriculum alignment.
Okay.
So that was just giving some background on the issue that we were investigating. That wasn't from the survey.
Okay, so I was thinking you were investigating a cohort of students.
No, that was just background on what led to the survey.
Understood. Okay,
so
thank you.
because we've seen those patterns. Those were patterns that we've seen for years, and we just wanted more insight from the students to basically explain those numbers.
Thank you for the clarification.
And our last question.
Hi. So going back to a question that was asked earlier about the levels, I'm trying to get clarification in regards to the transfer students that you are looking at. So are you identifying what type of transfer students they are? Are they all AA holding students? Are they students who are transferring before earning the AA?
The students that the survey was sent to were students who had come into UCF fall of 2017 with an AA degree.
Okay, so you're only looking at those who have already completed the AA. So we're not looking at students who may be a sophomore transfer that,
Correct.
haven't taken classes. Okay,
Correct.
I just wanted clarification
Yes,
on that.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're good. Okay. So let me offer my thanks to Lori for giving us some feedback on that. Thank you. And so now I'm seeing it happen outside. So, whoops, wrong direction. Wrong direction still. Nope, going the wrong way. Oh, there we go. Guess what? It's lunch. Yay! Okay. So lunch is set up outside exactly how we set up our morning refreshments. We're breaking for an hour, so enjoy your time. Pretty much close to the remainder of the portion of our time together. We're going to have some multidisciplinary exploration conversations, or, as I like to call it, multi-interdependent disciplinaries conversations. So we've intentionally tried to mix you up with faculty from different disciplines, with advisors from different backgrounds and with folks from different institutions. And I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit more mixing up, and I hope this doesn't break stuff, but I'm seeing the two of you sitting here all by yourselves. I'm going to ask if you can join the table 14 over there. Bigger, broader conversation. That's what we're going after here. So definitely over the past year in the discipline-specific conversations that we've had, there have been a lot of really great conversations around the skills that a student earns, learns, acquires through disciplines outside of the discussion we're having in that meeting. So what do I mean by that? So math, we love math. In the physics discipline meeting, and the engineering discipline meeting, and the chemistry discipline meeting, and the biology discipline meeting, we always talk about, well, you know, these math skills are really important. And so we try to encourage those conversations. We'll try to remember to invite math people to be a part of those conversations, to contribute that discipline area of expertise to the conversation where it has been relevant. More recently, we've brought into the curriculum alignment mix, as Harrison pointed out, additional disciplines. So I think, and I don't know, did any of our theater people actually make it? Do we have a theater? Theater. Oh, yay, theater. All right. And then we've got accounting is new to the table, so we've got accounting faculty who are here. Do we have, who are my accounting faculty? Let me see you. One. Oh, we got one. Okay. And then we've got English composition. I know we had a bunch of RSVPs from English comp. Should have a bunch of you guys here. And we've got speech. So our speech faculty. We got a couple of speech faculty here. So we have new disciplines that are contributing to these conversations. So I'm going to kind of pick on my speech and English comp background folks. These are skills that are taught in these introductory level courses that are also important to, well, not only their own disciplines, but the rest of the disciplines. So we've intentionally tried to create this opportunity for you to have these cross-disciplinary conversations. Basically, the purpose is to better understand how one discipline is really critical to another. And another way I said that is it's to really reinforce that what one course is teaching is critical to what is in other courses. It's also, the purpose of this is to clearly identify those skills that aren't taught in, well, engineering or statics, if you will. And maybe we can identify what that skill is and find out if there's someone at the table who might have insight where that skill can be gained. So it's not only to identify what our students are doing well, so this is the prompt that you all got prior to this conference. I had you kind of think about what was it that in your classes that you're teaching, your students are kind of coming to the table proficient in, or if not proficient, they already had kind of a good basis of knowledge. So what are your students already good at? But then I also wanted you to think about in the courses you teach, when your students come into your class, what are those skills that maybe they need some more help with developing? And are these skills that you're able to help them acquire through the course? Or are there really some skills that they need that maybe you can't teach, but, well, where are those skills taught? So that's what I wanted you to reflect on. So at this point, we're going to kind of dive into some work. First, kind of order of business. On your tables in the middle, you have Sharpies, pens, some sticky notes, and a piece of paper that looks like this. So at this point, I want each table to identify the person who gets to write stuff down. And whoever that person who gets to write stuff down is, you get this paper. So the person who gets to write stuff down gets the paper. The rest will be revealed. So at this point, you're just picking who's going to write stuff down. Okay. Everybody got your writer, you got your big piece of paper, and you're going, what the heck am I supposed to do with this? Perfect. All right, so now, what I want us to do is I want you guys to take the next 5 minutes to think about that prompt. This is not a sharing out, this is going to be a think about. So I want you to think about the courses you teach, and with the concept in mind of, yes, you want your students to be successful not only in that class, but ultimately in their program, their discipline, their major, that degree, that thing they're working on. And I want you to think about what is working, what can we celebrate, and I also want you to think about what's not so much working. So we're going to take about the next 5 minutes to just kind of have that. And you can do some little personal sharing if you want, but really this is more mental time. I want you to think about this. If you want to write notes down, you can do that. All right, so now everybody kind of has in mind what's really working in your course for your class, what skills are they really good at, and then what maybe isn't working as well, what do they kind of need and aren't ready for. I skipped a step, which was wanted to make sure that each of you got to introduce yourselves to one another, in case you hadn't already done that. So now I'm going to give you like, I don't know, take a couple of minutes and make sure you know everybody who's sitting around the table with you. So let's just do a really loud, quick, everybody introduce yourself to the people around the table. Say hi. Okay, now everybody knows each other. All right, so now what I want everybody to do, I've had you think about these skills that your students come in the classroom with that they're really excelling at, and then there's these things where maybe there's a little work that needs to be done. So now I want you to actually go and share those skills. Talk with those around the table about what do you think for your course are those skills that your students do really well in, and what are those things that you think your students coming in, gosh, they really need to do probably a little better in this, and what I'd really like is for my student to leave my class with this, but sometimes I might not be so effective in that, or I think they should be coming into the class with this. So to just share your thoughts. You don't have to qualify it. You don't have to justify it at this point. It's just let everybody else know what you're thinking. So we're going to do this for about 10 minutes. So as I said at a few tables, at this point you've solved all the world's problems, right? But I also want to definitely acknowledge that I would venture to guess that some of the questions you came up with were pretty difficult to answer. Probably didn't have a solution that was immediately available given the expertise around the table or what you knew of the resources that your institution or your department could offer to you. And that's okay, because there definitely are questions out there that they're good to ask, and it's good that we've acknowledged them. And that's just where we know that there's some more work that needs to be done. But what I'm more interested in at this point are those questions that you think you were able to kind of put some solutions, put some problem solving, point to some resources around them. So at this point, we're going to do a little bit of reporting out. And what I'd like to do is have each table pick one question that you think is maybe the most interesting question with around discussion that you had, around the solutions that you found or identified. Maybe it's something that you just were surprised by. So think a little bit about picking that question. And then we're going to put somebody on the spot and let them talk about that. So choose among yourselves. So take just a minute to identify your question. Pick who's going to talk about it. And then what I'd like to do is have somebody volunteer to go first, or I'm going to pick you. So we have a volunteer up here.
There we go. Oh.
So if you could please start with sharing your question. Identify who all you think it applies to. So we're going to do center, then we're going to go left, and then talk a little bit about the solutions. And if I can have us all kind of let's listen, because the question that they're asking might be one you had too, and maybe you've got more to elaborate on, or maybe you might change the mind on the question you want to talk about. So go ahead. And introduce yourself, please.
Okay, I will. All right, we're gonna. Sorry, had to have a team meeting. Jen Snyder, I'm from Valencia College, and I'm in science. So the question that we'll talk about had to do with diversity and cultural differences. How might my students appreciate the diversity of their class and the opportunities that this gives them? And we feel like this applies to all disciplines, just to be more culturally aware. So who and solutions were things like mandated working with other people and not the same people that you always work with, but make sure that they work with somebody other than their lab partners or who they already knew coming into the class. It's easy to hate people from afar, so we talked about that. Like once you know somebody, you find likes that you share. Networking, and then cultural experiences, things like study abroad and what school was it that mandated? At DePaul, he was talking about there were some co-curriculars that students had to do, take themselves and put themselves in a counterculture to their own, whether it was, a different part of the neighborhood than they grew up in and that kind of thing. So just making students aware of the larger world in classroom.
Thank you for that. You can totally drop it. All right, we've got table 1 over here.
Okay, I'm Sam Ajalani. I teach engineering technology at the College of Central Florida. Most of us here are either some technical math or, and you were in communication, which was one of our big ones. So we're not going to mention that because I think we all have problems with our students communicating back to us. But one of the areas we did, and I know in most of the technical programs, including the biology group here, we have trouble with math skills and science skills. Since I'm engineering, it's physics and math for me. They come in with 0. And you have to know like trig, and nobody gets trig in the high schools, it seems like, anymore. So what we decided was a couple of options we had was to collaborate with the math department and our science departments and try to give them things like problems we would use in our classes and let them go over it in the math class prior to them coming into a program course. So they're going to see the same type of physics and math that they're going to see in the program using the same equations that they're going to be actually having to do in the programs. That was one option we had to do on that one. And of course, YouTube's your buddy, right?
Thank you. Who would like to go next? We have a table over here, table 13, lucky number 13.
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm a CPA with Valencia College, career program advisor. One of the things that we talked about was how to help students develop their skills so that when they come into the classrooms, they're better prepared to do well. So we talked about a concept of offering some type of a Canvas course that every student, maybe when they complete orientation, they get assigned a Canvas course, and that Canvas course has all like modules for skills like time management, writing, maybe presenting, and it models what they should be doing for those skills so that they see and hopefully do better. We hope that that would increase their skills for class success when they actually take those courses.
Thank you very much. Next volunteer. Or voluntold. Oh, we got. Oh, good job.
Hi, I'm Brian Druckenmiller. I teach comp and creative writing at the Osceola campus. One of the question that we spent 25 of those 30 minutes on was how might a student gain confidence, motivation, and drive? Just not even talking about a skill, just changing this attitude, changing the mindset they have about the courses that they're in. And we talked about a lot of different things. As far as solutions, we talked about several resources, mentorships, internships, student services, and things like that. But I think what it came down to, most importantly, was one-on-one time with professors and advisors with the students. It's just, there's not necessarily that universal great elixir that's going to instill confidence in every single student at one time. So it's trying our best to meet with our students one-on-one. And also one thing that was, we didn't quite come up with the how in this regard, but understanding, and perhaps this will be a result of more one-on-one time with students, but understanding the student's personal support system a bit more, and understanding what specific challenges they may be facing if their support system is lacking or whatever the case may be. And by better understanding what's going on outside of, we don't always have that information. It's very challenging to get that information. So we didn't really have the how for that, but if there was a way to understand their support system a bit more, we could better ensure that we can work hard, we can have a better sense as to what we can do to instill these values that will help them.
Thank you. Got table.
Teresa, we have a question here. Is that
sorry.
possible?
Follow-up question?
Yeah, the last two groups, the one was over there with study skills, and then you're talking about the support system for the students. Do you guys have your first year, do you have like a first year classes for students entering the first year? Don't you guys do that in your first year classes, or is that not part of your first year?
2 semesters. It doesn't have to be the first semester.
I can't hear you.
It's the first 2 semesters. The SLS is mandatory through the state, but students don't have to take that their first semester. So a lot of the times they aren't getting those education plans that help motivate them to their careers. And it's more of the faculty really doesn't have time to get the one-on-ones like the advisors do. We come in one-on-one, and you have a lot of online learning now. With the online learning is that professor really keeping those office hours they're supposed to keep to really help the student who needs that one-on-one attention or may have a question, or the response is coming back within 48 hours. So those are the kind of things we're talking about with the motivation and helping a person with confidence, not making a student fail one test and then they're ready to withdraw and don't know the consequences because they're scared to come in and see an advisor. So.
All right, table 8. It's on the side.
Dante Leon, Daytona State College. Our question is, how might the student apply critical thinking skills to problem solving? So in our table discussion, we realized that it applies to many disciplines, especially math, technology, humanities, communication. It is, was it like a meta skills, an abstract skill? We need to use different areas of study to help develop that. For example, a math student needs to be able to decode the problems or the word problem in order to find out what the solution they're looking for. We also bandied around the message of schemas when you're using language learning, help them decode the message or help them decode the question itself, or showing teaching them by showing problem-solving skills. So I would say it's wide encompassing. It also requires the help of different disciplines in order to develop those habits of their minds when the student can look at something and then think independently, arrive at a solution, rather than copying and pasting something that they found on the web.
Thank you. Table 3, then we'll do 6, then 7.
Okay, I'm Ray Kennard, admission specialist here at Valencia West Campus. One of the things we touched on was just how to help students become more responsible for their own learning and help them develop college-ready skills. And so what we talked about was, for one, communication. I think somebody else touched on it, better communication between advisor, student, and instructor. Because faculty, I guess they don't have access to the students' advisors, and then advisors don't know a student struggling in a class until the student actually comes to the advisor and alerts them to the issue. So if there can be some type of better communication between the advisor, student, and the instructor, and even we've talked about partnerships with the K-12 schools, maybe talking to some of the teachers, giving them better understanding of what's expected as far as the students having college-ready writing skills or math skills, so they know what to expect coming to college.
Thank you. Table 6.
I'll stand too.
Hi, I'm Michael Robbins. I teach English at Valencia College. So a large part of our conversation actually centered around something similar to yours, which is the critical thinking skills. We had a table, I think that was dominantly scientists and mathematicians, and then one English major who treats English like science. And so there's a lot of conversation about the idea of how students come to conclusions, how they sort of understand the difference between a corollary relationship and a causal relationship, their capacity to eventually have an analytical result. So basically, thinking issues that the students suffer with. A lot of our solutions came with ideas like, say, for example, incorporating more philosophical lecture or philosophical coursework. This can include things like symbolic logic, this can include formal logic, this can include just good old-fashioned critical thinking and understanding fallacies of reasoning. We talked about the idea of more specific or closer mentorship with faculty, with graduate students, and even just the idea of having better tutoring services, not necessarily product-driven tutoring services, but tutoring services that focus on things like process and development. So rather than coming with your final draft of your essay to get it checked, you go to get tutoring on reading. Like, how do I read this text and how do I think about the reading of this text? Something along those lines. Or you might be able to get something that's more specific with a formalized study group where you look at modeled behavior for thinking and thought processes. Because, again, it's not natural to think the way that we think. It's something that you have to actually develop and foster over an extended period of time. So modeling that behavior may be useful to the students in the long term.
Thank you. Table 7.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Mia Pierre, and I teach at Valencia College the New Student Experience course and communication courses. So our how might a student improve, retain information, and apply learning from semester to semester and course to course. And the people that can help and collaborate with that work would be the Tutoring Center, advising sequence of courses and having those students understand you need to take a certain sequence, take English Comp 1, please take it in the next term, English Comp 2, so they can keep and retain that information. Also, faculty embed modules with remedial work and refreshers, for example, from like maybe a chemistry to the biologies and the math courses. And a big point that came up was really awesome was faculty share the data on students if they progress in the sequence. So have faculty have a conversation in the classroom. Hi, how many of you are English 1? Great. Please understand taking English 2 right after this promotes your success in English 2 and your other courses for humanities and other disciplines in terms of chemistry, writing, in the sciences. And then the next one was also advising, collaborate with faculty and their offices, and making sure that faculty are aware the sequence is important, advising, they know that, and vice versa. Advisors know faculty talk to advisors in terms of that sequence as well. And finally, faculty and students having a mentorship in terms of understanding that sequence and retaining that information, applying it to the learning from semester to semester and course to course. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm seeing table 11.
Thank you. My name is Omar El-Shanawi. I work in a data and analytical support role at UCF. So table 11. So our question was how might students improve their soft skills, things like social skills, time management, items like that. And so in terms of who we identified areas that might be able to help, folks like new student experience, so exposure to the college experience, things like social events, academic and life planning, the Career Development Center, so sort of the soft skills development, through mock interviews, real world exposure and discussions. And also the support role, so learning support and academic support. So things like, time management skills through those, test taking skills and other things that could help students from a time management perspective gain those skills throughout their college career.
Thank you. Couple of tables I don't think we've heard from yet. Okay, right there in the middle.
Hi, I'm Tony Upchurch. I teach communication courses at Lake Sumter State College. And one of the things I thought was so fascinating about our conversation is that we all acknowledge the need for students to access the resources that are available to them. But so many times students fail to do that. And one of the great things we saw is that they'll go to financial aid advisors and say, I'm not doing well in this class, I want out. And they're like, did you talk to your instructor? Like, no, I can't do that. For whatever reason, they fail to reach out to the instructor. And then we have all these other tools in place for them. And so we were trying to understand what is keeping students from accessing these tools. And we started to see that there might be maybe some fear in that. Like, asking for help looks like defeat, or maybe there's some stigma associated with that. And so we were thinking, perhaps if we could change the language we use around the word resources or help, and perhaps talk about ways that it'd be more of an opportunity for them to access those tools.
Thank you for that. I'm keeping tabs. 15. There we
So
go.
my name is Christopher Lorscher. I teach physics at Seminole State College. So one of the questions that we talked about was, how do we get students to think more critically? And we sort of came up with a few things, but one of the things that we talked about was that we should always set the bar very high, and that we should get away from the mindset of just simple plug and chug. That we should sort of, while we're lecturing or while we're doing student activities, we should always instill in the student that it's a deep understanding of what's going on is very, very important, and that they should get away from the memorization of just simple steps and think critically about what they're doing. So, yeah, so that was one of the things we talked about.
Thanks. And table, I think 14 of you guys reported out. Did I put you on the spot yet? All right, I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay, my name is Christina Thompson. I teach at Seminole State. I got put on the spot to speak and to write today. So one of the things we talked about, similar to what some of the other tables mentioned, was study skills. Students seem to have difficulty preparing and knowing what to do for their courses and how to study. So we had talked about our student success classes and how even though all of our colleges offer them, students are still struggling in this area, and we're not sure why that is. But one of the things we thought could help was a more personalized approach, whether we have a study skill tutor in our Academic Success Center, whether we have personal consultations with an expert, something so that students can really learn what works for them and not just what works for other people, so they can really kind of personalize how to study for their own classes and figure out how they learn.
Thanks. And I think we have one table left, table 2. Oh, we need a mic, sorry. Just talk. No, I'm kidding.
Thank you. No, we're bringing you a mic.
Darn it.
Sorry.
I'm Donna Galbraith. I teach English at Valencia College. One question several of us had was how we might help our students become better readers of more complex texts. And in terms of thinking of people who might help us, there are reading teachers that we might learn from ourselves. We might look for a reading across the discipline team at our school. And also talking to other faculty that we know to see if they've got methods that they use so that we can learn from our peers in our discipline. And then we also talked a lot at our table about what we can do in our own classes too, rather than just sending students somewhere else. We talked about modeling reading with students, having students work with groups and teach one another. And one important factor would be requiring students to produce evidence for what they believe about the readings when they're trying to draw conclusions. And we definitely talked about vocabulary building, that students need the vocabulary of our disciplines to be able to read within our disciplines.
Thank you, and thank you all. So in what I just heard, I actually heard quite a few themes. And I had no preconceived notions of what the questions would be, what the solutions would be, or any of the conversations that would occur. And it's interesting to me, actually, though I guess I shouldn't be totally surprised, that I heard a lot about soft skills. So not so much, with an exception that I heard here, about math skills, which I think you could hone that down to probably particular points. And I would imagine probably in all disciplines there are some particular skills that I need coming in. But I did hear a lot about critical thinking, how to study, how to manage my time, how to communicate and reach out to my students effectively. And I did also hear a good number of potential solutions to that, things that I could do within my own class, resources that I could take advantage of within my own institution, or among my peers, whether they're in my discipline or not. So I think this is giving me evidence that we have the tools, at least for the questions that we've shared out loud just now, we have these tools available to us, but it is kind of hard work to reach out and concretely identify those and always have those tools, if you will, in your toolbox when you need them and you're working with your students. So you are in this room because, and a part of these curriculum alignment conversations, because we expect you to be, if you will, ambassadors for your discipline, for your institution, for your offices, and take the conversations that we have in our alignment meetings and in this meeting here, and take those conversations back to your institutions, to your departments, to your offices, and expand maybe some more on, these were some really interesting questions to me that came up. And these were the discussions that we had at our table about this, but how can I make this more real for my department, for my advising office, for my class? And so what I want you to do now is just take, and this is going to be your silent reflection moment. Just take a couple of minutes to think about that. What are you going to take home? We have this technique, my background is mental health counseling. We have this technique in the mental health industry, which is whenever you ask someone to reflect or whenever you are in a conversation with someone, silence is pretty powerful. And being able to not speak is hard. So the technique is whenever you think you're going to interrupt, very slowly count to 30 to let that other person think a little longer, or reflect, or speak. So what am I going to do with this? Well, we are going, and by I mean me, my partner in crime, Harrison, and Emily, and our team. We're going to take this information back and synthesize it for you. And what we want to do is try to put together some resources. So it's not only what are the common questions, but also what are the common solutions, ideas, and opportunities that you identified. So to that end, where you have all kinds of sticky notes and pieces of paper all over the table, please just leave those there. You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to move it, but just leave it there. We will collect it. We won't attribute it to anybody, so don't worry about your handwriting. We'll try to interpret. But what we're going to do is we want to record the good ideas. We want to record the challenging questions, and we want to share those. Obviously share them more broadly with all of you, but it's also sharing them with our stakeholders and with the other offices, units, individuals, people, administrators, faculty, who we think can help implement those solutions. So as you're thinking about what you're going to take home with you, or back to the office on Monday with you, we're also planning on following up to take the work that you've done, so it's not for naught. Any additional remark from you on summary? Then I'm going to introduce Amy.
Thank you, Dr. Dorman. And thank you for doing this. One of the things that I want to say is that I remember we were at Seminole State College and we were having curriculum alignment discussions on physics. We were in the new building, a beautiful building, the Student Services Center. And one of the faculty in physics really challenged others and said, why not reach out? This is a physics faculty saying, why not reach out to the engineering faculty and find out what do they want our students to know or to learn through physics so that they can be successful in engineering. And he suggested, why not maybe reach out to those faculty and then have them create problems that will be done in physics, where the student will do a physics problem, but with which has the application part of it. So what am I saying? Like Donna said about reading skills, or what Dante talked about, the critical thinking skills, and most of you, what you've mentioned here, or what Sam had talked about with regard to math, there is opportunity to reach out to the other member faculty in the other discipline, the other department, and collaborate and find out what is it that you can do within your course, or you can collaborate across the courses to ensure that the students are successful. So this conversation does not end here. It continues, like Dr. Dorman said. So with that, I'll do the introduction. So with that, we are really grateful and lucky to have Dr. Amy Locklear. Dr. Locklear is the Vice President and Provost at Daytona State College. She's one of our key leaders in not only direct connect partner institutions, but a great champion of curriculum alignment.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks. No, you don't need to do that. How many of you are going to be wearing a cap and gown here in the next couple of months? Cap and gown, you have to, yep. So for graduation, right? How old is that tradition? It's a European thing. 12th century, right? We love tradition in higher ed, right? And a lot of it is still around. You know, we have Euclidean geometry, and we have the Socratic method, and we have Beowulf, and we have new math. I think that's been around since then, don't you think? That was a joke. I'm kidding. And we have the outfits, right? We love tradition, but we find ourselves in a time of change. This morning, I was late today because this morning we had a special speaker at Daytona State. His name is Jamie Cassip. He's the education evangelist at Google. I had to Google that, I didn't believe it. I'm like, I can't believe, who is this guy? Well, of course, he was a total Google type guy, you know, lots of earrings and rings and stuff. And he's like, man, you know, this is how we do it at Google. He was fascinating, but he was talking about the pace of change in education and how education has to change to keep ahead of it. And yet we're kind of a traditional profession in a lot of ways. He compared the Generation Z, those born since 2000 or so, to the generation that came along after the widespread use of electricity, the first generation to come along after the widespread use of electricity. That it was just that dramatic. And that these kids today, we talk about them, right? They can't let go of this, although neither can we now, right? Have you ever been in a seminar where they did the exercise where everybody takes their phone out and you swap it with somebody else? The anxiety level goes through the roof. People are like, he's touching my phone. You know, they're like, oh, I can't stand it. No, it drives people crazy. These kids have never been without Wi-Fi. They've never bought anything that couldn't be scanned across the thing. You know, pretty soon, this guy was telling us, you'll walk in the store, pick up what you want, and walk out, and you won't ever touch anything. Because as you walked in, your credit card was scanned, and everything you're carrying out is scanned too. So it was kind of an interesting, fascinating thing. He pointed out that just yesterday, Tesla announced a self-driving car for $35,000. So, you know, these kids today will not have the same experience of information in general that we have had in our lives. The skills that employers tell us they want are exactly what you all have been talking about. As I've walked around the tables, I wrote down a few things. The problem solving, the critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and probably more than anything, information literacy. In a world where information comes at them from every corner, rapid fire, there's nothing you can't find out in 30 seconds, pretty much. But what you do with it is where our role comes in, right? And what we have got to try to teach them. These are also children of the recession. And they have a completely different viewpoint about what jobs are like and how long you're going to have one and whether you should even want to have one for your whole life. Not the same job anyway. We hope they want a job. Our job is to be out in front of that curve and to help them adapt to that new world, which is scary. It is scary to me. I'm a former faculty member. I taught political science for years, and I loved teaching it. And yet I look at the world today, and I'm sometimes relieved that I'm on the administrative side. I went to the dark side. And you guys in the classroom that are still making this happen, you know, it's hard. This is a real challenge these days. But I think we're definitely on the right path. Everything that I saw today was a modeling of that collaborative, creative, confidence-building effort that you were talking about with what is needed in our classrooms. So for that, I congratulate you, and I thank you for being a part of this very important work. Congratulations, and thank you.
Thank you, Amy. So that concludes our day, and I am now standing in between you and your weekend. So please have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you when we next cross paths, and keep up the very great work that you're doing. Thank you.